yet. I've written a book about keeping dogs, a book about keeping cats, and I always say, if you have the time and the money for veterinary care and the compassion, please go to the shelter. Don't buy from a breeder, because we have a pet overpopulation crisis. Don't get one, get two, so they can keep each other company.
And briefly on shelters, I must put this to you. You run your own shelters at Peter.
Just one in Virginia.
Well, the one in Virginia is now hugely controversial in itself, because as I understand it, in 2023, you received over 3,000 cats and dogs in the shelter. Nearly 80% of them were exterminated. You in Peter kill your animals.
They weren't exterminated. They were euthanized, which is very different. Somebody held them in their arms and let them go because they
were killed?
Yes, because they were in a world that didn't want them. And
your ratio of killing is
no, you
far
cannot leave it there. You cannot leave it there. Our ratio of euthanasia is high because we are the only shelter in that entire low-income area that allows people to bring animals who are ridden with cancer, who are aggressive, who have been out, have heartworm that they can't cure, and come to us, and free of charge, we will take them in and we will euthanize their animals. And all the other shelters around us are no-kill, which sounds so marvelous, but they send the animals who have to be euthanized to us to do what they consider the dirty work. And we will always do that, and we open our doors to anyone and come and watch it and see who these poor animals are.
Ingrid Newkirk, we have to end there. I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio, live from downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. It is Tuesday, school day 2, and we're into February 4th already. Today, sunny, a high of minus 18 in Winnipeg, very similar to yesterday with wind chill. It'll feel more like minus 34. We're on air with you till 8:37, and let's say good morning to the team. Corey Funk is back. Good morning, Corey. Corey directs the show and we'll be covering the commute on air. Abby Adeyemi is back. Good morning, Abby. Abby's behind the controls as our technical producer on the program, and we'll be covering your forecast on the air throughout the morning. And Kevin Ipatebo's here again this morning. Hi, Kev. Kev is our YouTube producer. So let's get straight into morning headlines. Obviously, tariffs and trade have been the big news, but there's other news stories developing in Manitoba as well. And Heather Wells joins us with headlines.
Good morning. Well, it has been a busy couple of days for workers at Manitoba liquor marts. They are now restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Wab Kinew says the province is going to undo its orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. The move comes after Donald Trump granted Canada a 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs. The pause on those U.S. tariffs has brought some temporary relief to Manitoba's pork industry. Scott Peters is a hog producer west of Steinbach, raising thousands of pigs every year. Peters says Manitoba's relationship with the U.S. pork industry is very intertwined, and he hopes the threat of tariffs will end before this 30-day pause expires. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we are going to be talking to the federal minister, David McGuinty, the public safety minister. He's going to be at the border at Emerson today, and he's going to join us before he goes there to cover what issues are there. They're going to be doing a training exercise. So you heard yesterday that one of the things that developed, as Heather was alluding to, was changes at the border in a position known as a fentanyl czar. So what does all of that mean? Why does it happen now? And how long will it last to appease what's happening with the trade war looming and this 30-day reprieve? So David McGuinty will be live on Information Radio later. In the first hour of the program, we're going to hear how some people are feeling about the pause on tariffs and get some political analysis of that as we have Ottawa Report coming up. And then a little bit later in the show to something completely different. The Winnipeg Contemporary Dancers embracing something around the journey of getting older. Stay tuned.
On Cue with Tom Power.
I'm a Mr. Kim and this is my store.
If you're familiar with Kim's Convenience, you probably know that it started as a play in Toronto and then became a hit TV sitcom before it disappeared abruptly off the air. The creator of Kim's Convenience, Ins Choi, will be here to tell you how he came up with the play and why he stepped away. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The U.S. tariff threat is on hold for now, but the pressure to secure the border is not over. And U.S. President Donald Trump is still making comments about his plans for a 51st state. How is Canada going to proceed? Janice McGregor is here from our Parliamentary Bureau with some analysis. Janice, what happens now?
Marcia, what political leaders have to grapple with is that this may be an economic reprieve, but it's not a political one. Sure, Canada's not rolling out tariffs this morning, but everything else remains. They have to demonstrate progress at the border, name someone to be this fentanyl czar, make sure that the new spending actually delivers results that Washington will see. And Canada can explain away Trump's trade deficit allegations, but the data on military spending and defense capabilities are not flattering and have to improve, not just because of Trump's threats. Even work on the retaliation strategy can't let up because March 4th isn't very far away. And even after that, there's the other trade reviews with April 1st deadlines. Those could trigger other actions against Canada. On and on it goes. Premiers aren't canceling their lobbying trip to Washington next week. If anything, it's more urgent than ever. Here's Premiers Andrew Furey and David Eby, who represent provinces on opposite coasts but are very much on the same page.
Who knows? I mean, he's saying 30 days. Can we really, take him at his word?
We need to be prepared if there's a tweet tomorrow that puts the tariffs back on.
Canadians have demonstrated, again, that they value their sovereignty. But divisions have emerged over the best tactics for defending that, how much sacrifice people are prepared to withstand. And as complicated as it is for the Liberal government during this period of transition in Ottawa, it's also complicated for the Conservative opposition as it tries to balance its instincts for patriotism while still harnessing the same populism that propelled Trump to power in the first place.
So the politics remain chaotic. What does that mean for how Canadians do business from here?
Well, how much of this reignited patriotism persists, not only in the minds of shoppers, but on the minds of voters, influencing their ballot choices for months to come? The whole point of negotiating a deal is having certainty and stability into the future. But Canadians now have good reason to believe that the trade agreement that affects their economy the most can't be trusted. The guy that signed it doesn't keep his word. This riskier new normal could shape business, political, even personal decisions for the entire Trump presidency.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Trump's tariff pause for Canada is having a mixed reaction south of the border. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, in Trump world, they're declaring victory. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Canada is bending the knee, just like Mexico. Now, President Trump agreed to pause tariffs against his neighbors for the next month after both countries agreed to beef up their borders and crack down on fentanyl. But it should be noted most of Canada's commitments were announced back in December. But this pause comes as welcome relief to states bracing for potential retaliation from Canada. Kentucky's governor, Democrat Andy Beshear, was concerned about his state's bourbon sales up north. Listen.
The number we're worried about is zero. That's how many bottles of Kentucky bourbon were going to be on shelves in Canada, which again is our number one export partner. Listen, when anyone's policies threaten the livelihood of the people of Kentucky, I'm certainly going to speak up.
Now, while these tariffs may be on hold, the threat isn't over. Trump's strategy to leverage the U.S. economy as a weapon to force other countries to make concessions is being viewed by his base as a win.
Not a win for China, though. China is fighting back on tariffs. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this trade war is escalating between the world's two largest economy. Now, Trump's 10% tariffs on Chinese products have taken effect, and Beijing is already retaliating with targeted levies of its own, including a 15% tax on U.S. energy exports and certain metals used for electronics and solar panels. Now, China is also launching an anti-monopoly investigation into Google's parent company, Alphabet, and may slap sanctions on various holding companies that own big U.S. brands like Calvin Klein. Now, Trump slapped on these tariffs for China's exports of fentanyl, and the White House says Trump will speak to Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Despite the pause on U.S. tariffs for Canada and Mexico, there are major concerns within Newfoundland and Labrador's fishing industry. A trade war could cost the province billions of dollars and would put thousands of people out of work. The union representing those in the fishery want the province to come up with a plan. Elizabeth Whitten has that story.
Newfoundland and Labrador is exporting about $4.5 billion in goods to the U.S. every year. As much as 80% of all seafood caught here is purchased south of the border. The impact of new American tariffs is a crisis this province hasn't seen in decades, says Jeff Loader, executive director of the Association of Seafood Producers.
This is arguably the most serious threat to the Newfoundland Labrador fishery since the cod moratorium.
One of the first waves which could be affected is the province's coveted snow crab fishery, worth more than $700 million annually. It starts up next month. And Food Fisheries President Dwan Street says tariffs will impact harvesters, plant workers, and adjacent industries.
Our industry is going to be the first and we think most heavily impacted in Newfoundland and Labrador by these tariffs.
Street and Loader want the provincial government to put together a roundtable looking at what support could be offered. And while buying local is important, Street says there aren't enough buyers in the country to keep seafood sales afloat.
We need to prepare and always be prepared for the uncertainty that's going to come over the next 4 years.
She's anticipating that uncertainty to remain constant and is a reason why the fishery needs a new plan. Elizabeth Whitten, CBC News, St. John's.
People board a large ship leaving Santorini. There have been more than 200 underwater tremors in the area surrounding the Greek island. The strongest measured 4.9 magnitude. It triggered land and rock slides, and there are concerns that a bigger earthquake or tsunami could be coming. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with Donald Trump today in Washington. A ceasefire in Gaza began January 19. Israel's right-wing coalition is pressing for a restart in the war against Hamas and to tear up the ceasefire agreement. One of Netanyahu's nationalist allies has already quit over the deal. Another is threatening to do the same unless the war on Hamas resumes. But Trump has made it clear he wants the ceasefire to stand and move into the next phase. It is expected to include the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. Since his return to the Oval Office, Donald Trump has made several orders targeting transgender Americans. Access to gender-affirming care for youth was rolled back. Openly trans soldiers have been banned from serving in the military. As Katie Nicholson tells us, the changes could alter whether Americans affected by these orders can claim asylum in Canada.
Kelly's dog tap dances across the floor of her new Minnesota home. She and her family moved here a year and a half ago from Florida because of anti-trans laws and hostility.
Essentially, we were kicked out of our church and our school.
Kelly's oldest, Ollie, is trans. We aren't using the family's last name because they have concerns about their safety. After moving once, they fear they may have to move again because of actions taken by the Trump administration. That means looking at other countries, Malta, Portugal, and Canada.
To qualify for asylum in Canada, you must prove a well-founded fear of persecution.
It's hard for her to digest.
How are you and I having this conversation about seeking asylum in Canada? It's so dystopian. I just don't understand it.
Claiming asylum has been a tough argument for Americans to make in Canada, says Toronto-based immigration lawyer Joyce Nakang.
What you have to prove is that the state is unwilling or unable to protect you and that there's nowhere else in your country that you can go and live safely.
That was before Trump's orders rolled out, recognizing only two genders, banning transgender soldiers from the military, and defunding gender-affirming care for youth. Now, the argument may resonate.
I think we're seeing a lot clearer picture of the state being the agent of persecution.
Kelly's son, Ollie, says he feels safe in Minnesota, but he's keeping his options open as the country's policies change.
I didn't think so much was going to happen so fast and it would be so bad.
And if he has to leave, his family says they will do it together. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
This is one of the most read stories at cbcnews.ca. It's on our main page. That is the latest from World Report. This month, we are asking you to follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach new listeners and helps you stay on top of the day's top stories. I'm Marcia Young. This is CBC News.
good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. We're live downtown on the air here with CBC on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Very cold and extreme cold to the west. We're the warm spot at minus 22, so that gives you some context on what the whole province looks like this morning. Well, this hour on the program, we're going to continue talking about trade and hitting pause on the tariffs. So we'll get the political analysis coming up at 10 to 7 with a full interview with Ryan Tumulty. He joins us regularly. He's a political reporter with the Toronto Star. Also this hour on the program, some of your comments about our ongoing relationship with the United States and whether or not for you as a Manitoban, it has shifted in your mind. So we're going to share some of those comments in a moment after news headlines. Plus, we have a story about a Winnipegger who has family in Gaza and shared with us what it's been like for her since Israel and Hamas have agreed to the ceasefire. Stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for those headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, workers at Manitoba liquor marts are restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Rob Canoe says the province will undo its orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. The move comes after Donald Trump granted Canada a 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs. Casinos in Manitoba will now be required to report suspected money laundering directly to police. Up until now, Manitoba Liquor and Lottery staff would report any suspicious activity to the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. President Trump had accused Canada of allowing drug smuggling and money laundering. Premier Canoe says yesterday's announcement was not in response to those threats from the U.S., but he says if it can strengthen the relationship, it is a win-win. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Now to some of those comments here, because that word relationship is coming up a whole lot. I asked on Facebook yesterday as all this was transpiring and right after the 30-day pause was given, how has your view of our relationship with the U.S. now shifted or not? And Allison Dawn writing in, I would love it if we could actually start talking about a question about Canada joining the EU more. And an interesting article in The Economist that she's been reading about that. So people talking about wanting now to use some of this time also to explore strengthening other trade relationships. So that's sort of a lot of the comments coming up around that. In addition, Julie Kentner writing in, the trust is broken. It may or may not be repairable. Kathy Harness says that her view of this relationship has shifted. She writes, definitely. I will not travel to the USA for the next 4 years. I still like and feel for the individual people in the U.S., but not the administration. And finally, Chris Brandon weighing in this morning. It has definitely shifted. As long as someone like Trump is at the helm, Canada needs to think seriously about diversifying who are our allies, our biggest trading partners. So a lot of comments coming in. We had hundreds every time I posted a question about this. Obviously, we're all engaged in it. So you can weigh in there or online, on our listener line anytime at 204-788-3205. Well, let's turn our attention now to what's happening here on the ground with weather and traffic. Abby Adiemi, good to see ya.
Good to see you.
Did you have a nice long weekend?
I did.
Good.
And then I was waking up this morning and I stepped outside and I'm like, oops, it's a very cold one for me.
Yeah, same as yesterday. It's just frigid out there.
It's going to be a cold one across board. We do have, I'll call it beta cold temperatures across the province with an extreme cold one in effect for southern Manitoba, mostly in the southwestern corner of the province, impacting from Brandon, Dauphin, all the way down to Verdun. We're seeing wind chills in the values of minus 40 to 45, combined with actual temperatures in that region. We're already seeing 25 to 27, and Brandon is currently around 28. Light winds creating these dangerous conditions, and risk of frostbite is a thing. So take care if you are in that part of the province. However, coming down to Winnipeg and surrounding areas, Winnipeg right now, it's chilly at minus 22, mainly clear conditions we're seeing outside. One of those days, you just want to keep your coats tight. We will see some sun come out later in the day, but that will make a transition to a mix of sun and clouds as the day goes on. Some light winds will keep things a bit breezy, and temperatures will be reaching a high of minus 18. However, that should not fool you, because the wind chill also feels like minus 34 this morning. So frostbite is also on the menu. Overall, Mercy, temperatures across across board still feels dangerously cold with the wind chills making it even feel colder. So you need to take care out there. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -22.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk came back as well. Both you guys with your lazy long weekends.
I know, right?
I'm not jealous. You're jealous. The commute this morning, how was it?
Overall, so far it seems pretty quiet out there. I haven't heard any major issues here in the city. I will say, if you're in northern Manitoba, pretty much, anything kind of north of Swan River into the Interlake, the Pas, Thompson, all those areas, poor visibility is actually what's being reported on Manitoba 511 right now, and partly covered highways right across northern Manitoba. So be careful if you're on the highways there. If you do have any updates for me anywhere in the province or here in the city, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, after 15 months, there is hope in Gaza. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire. The fighting has stopped, and Israel and Hamas have exchanged hostages for prisoners. Holocafa lives in Winnipeg, but has family and friends in Gaza, and she's a Palestinian refugee who lived in exile in Qatar since the age of 2. Hala and her sons immigrated to Canada in 2023, just 2 months before the October 7th attack. And this morning, we bring you a feature interview that she had with CBC's Zubina Ahmed.
All my cousins in Gaza have been literally begging me to help them. They've been begging for salvation because the situation was unbearable. Like literally my cousins were telling me, Hala, like every day we stay alive by mere chance. My cousins have moved to Rafah. Some of them in Rafah had all their houses demolished, and some of them had bits and pieces of their houses left. So they are all supporting each other and staying like with whatever is remaining. And some of them have put up a tent where their house was. They are all very happy by the mere fact that there was a ceasefire implemented. Because that was the urgent and most immediate need. But they have their hopes, they have their wishes, they are dreaming of this had made people like see Palestine, realize what's been happening to them, and to do something for them, and not to leave them alone. So they do have a lot of hopes for the future.
Is it heartbreaking to, to see what they have been through all this while?
It has been beyond traumatizing. It has been beyond hard for me. Like I've always been known for, like among all my groups of friends, like before moving here, like I had always been perceived as a person like with this positive energy, and that I would always be the person lighting up the room. I think I'm now broken, and I think I'm now broken and ruined. I think I'm broken and ruined to an extent that I don't know if I can ever be the person that I used to be. Because as a Palestinian, and as a Palestinian that could have been in Gaza, it could have been me, it could have been my kids, could have been my siblings that are there. So the survivor's guilt feelings are overwhelming for us. Throughout the period of 15 months that we've witnessed this genocide, like live on all the social media and TV channels, I cried every day, without exaggeration. I cried every day. I cried every day when I went into the shower and warm water poured on me. I felt guilty for having that. During my communications with them during like the 15 months, I personally was speechless. Like, you know, the things that they used to tell me like are things that I personally could not find words to respond to. What would you say when they say that they have no food, when they have no water, when they have no medicine, when they have no hospitals, when they have no shelter, when it was raining and they are in tents and the mattresses and all the clothes that they had were literally floating on the water, and they are all soaked wet. What do you respond to that? They are now hopeful. However, we are very scared because the speech of the U.S. president of, you know, wanting to empty literally Gaza, that the neighboring Arab countries should take all Gazans as refugees in neighboring countries. We as Palestinians regard that as a shameful plan. Any single scene that we witnessed in these 15 months, had it been not Palestinian, had it been someone else, the whole world would act immediately. I do have a dream to have a farm in Palestine and to have a warm cup of tea in a free Palestine.
That was Hala Kofa speaking with CBC's Sabina Ahmed in a feature conversation about what it's been like for her living here, watching what happened in the war between Gaza and Israel.
Be an Iron Man and curl. No, not your hair. This is curling on the frozen ice of the Assiniboine River. Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel is back February 7th to 9th. Form a team, embrace the winter with one hand, a rock with the other, and join the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel, sponsored by CBC. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
So that is coming up on Friday, and we have a CBC team involved this year. It's going to be cold, but that's curling weather, right? We're going to be down on the river. It's going to be super fun. To encourage you to come and watch some of the teams that are involved in this, because this is for a not-profit organization, Ironman Curling, and of course for a great cause. Down at the Red Boyne Boat Club on Churchill Drive, Friday through the weekend. CBC, a proud sponsor, as you heard. This event supports the Heart and Stroke Foundation and other Canadian charities. So, as I mentioned, great causes. And we have a prize pack to give away. This is just to kind of encourage you. So I'm going to show you what we've got, and then we're going to talk about, what we're looking for you to enter. So Kev's got a picture, I think, for YouTube. He can pop up here. But there's a hat, and there's a really nice travel bag. This is all with the new CBC logo. There's CBC socks, because this is all about staying warm. There's a really nice embossed notebook from CBC. There's a shirt here. Oh, yeah, my studio's full. And then we've got these cool mugs. This one's fun. It's got it's the Ironman curling mug. So the mug, if we all hold it up close for you, I love the logo. Oh, there it is. It's got like somebody standing and the bullseye's behind them, and it's just their silhouette in front, and they're holding up curling rocks like, whoa, fun mug. And then this is retro CBC, folks. There's the logo as created, the CBC pie in 1974. Love that. So all of this is in our prize pack. And in fact, we have 2 of them. So here is the call for you to enter our contest. You can enter by calling us or emailing us with a heartwarming story about curling. And we know that this sport in Canada really takes you to those backyard rinks, and it takes you out on the river in your town or in your city in Manitoba. And maybe it's something you did with friends or family, and maybe you did it with a jam pail. So a heartwarming story about curling to enter to win one of these fabulous prize packs. And how do you share that story? Well, you can call us 788-3205, or you can email us at win@cbc.ca. So while you're thinking about a story to share, I pulled a quirky live performance from That Curling Show on CBC. This is with Devin Haru. And this is actors Andrew Preston and Sarah Connors. They dropped by that curling show to perform a tune from a curling musical. Yes, there is one. The musical is called Second Shot. This tune is called One More End.
The first thing is the rock. You throw it down the ice towards the perfect spot. It's the weight, like the speed when you throw. That determines just how far the curling rock will go. Now a spot the ice you want to land. The rocks will stop. Depends on what you're trying and what you have planned. Each end is 8 rocks, 8 shots to end with a score. I know what you're thinking, Jack. This game seems kind of stupid and it sounds like a bore, but I used to think so, just like you. Mom used to go to practice and make us go too. But you watch another end and keep watching them play. You find that you just can't keep away. One more end, just a few more stones. Next thing you know, you want to be Jennifer Jones. So once you're sliding on ice and throwing the rocks, that's when the real fun begins. And you are peeling the guards or throwing a takeout, drawing behind and biting the forklift, watching the weight of it, calling the line, hoping your rock can slide just one more foot. So once you're sliding on ice and throwing the rocks, that's when the real fun begins. Hoping your rock can slide just one more foot. Before you know it, you're dying to win. One more end. One more end. And just one more.
Who knew there was a curling musical? Not me, or at least I forgot. That actually was a performance from That Curling Show live from the curling musical. The tune's called One More End, and that's just an abridged version of it. But we're playing it to try to get you in the mood for your love of curling. Share a heartwarming story. You could win one of these fantastic prize packs that I outlined, and we'll give you another chance and a reminder of the contest in the next hour. This is, of course, all leading up to the Ironman Curling Bonspiel, which starts down in the Red River next weekend. To get us to news, here's some music from Peach Luffy.
Now that song is over, don't know if you're really here to stay. Can we just go back and play our memories before they fade? I got some questions that if I'd mention, could I handle all the rain? I think I might know what you'd say. Would you
Peach Luffy and Better Off. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's minus 22 in Winnipeg. We have business news coming up, but right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is cold. Bundle up, Winnipeg. A high today of minus 18. Right now, we're at minus 22. Bright today. Snow on the way tomorrow. It has been a busy couple of days for workers at Manitoba liquor marts. They are now restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Wapkanu says the province will undo its orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. The move comes after Donald Trump granted Canada a 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs.
I really got to thank the hardworking people in the LCs and in the warehouses. You're probably, looking at the ceiling wondering what's going on. But it's clear that when we stand up for ourselves as Canadians and as Manitobans, we take steps like taking $80 million out of the American economy by not buying their booze, that gets attention.
Canoe says Manitoba needs to diversify its markets to sell to the European Union and Asia. He says his cabinet will not move forward with plans to restrict U.S. companies from winning provincial contracts to supply goods and services. Now, this pause on tariffs has brought relief for many industries, but the relief may be temporary. Liz Kovach is president of Supply Build Canada. The Winnipeg-based association represents building supply manufacturers and retailers in Western Canada. She says members still worry about what could happen after 30 days.
Tariffs always will have a negative impact because if companies can't afford to carry those costs, there is going to be job loss that's related to that. And I look at our lumber mills, for example, those ones typically will get hit the hardest, especially when they are smaller. So there's obviously a lot of angst about that.
Kovach says there is an opportunity to find potential new trading partners, but that doesn't happen overnight. Now, the pause on U.S. tariffs has brought some temporary relief to Manitoba's pork industry. Scott Peters is a hog producer west of Steinbach and raises thousands of pigs every year. Some are sent for slaughter and processed in Manitoba and then shipped as pork products to the U.S. Live animals are also exported south of the border. Peters says Manitoba's relationship with the U.S. pork industry is very intertwined.
We definitely think that the tariffs are unfair. They will impact us directly, and it doesn't matter if we finish pigs in Canada or if we sell weanlings into the U.S. The well-oiled machine that we have is in jeopardy of breaking down.
Peters hopes cooler heads will prevail. He hopes the threat of tariffs will end before the 30-day pause expires. Manitoba farmers are still feeling anxious about the threat of possible trade tariffs with the U.S. Jerry Friesen is a retired farmer and founder of the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program. It provides free counseling services for farmers.
Just the fact that these conversations were happening, these threats were happening, I actually found out that my own anxiety levels were going up, and I think partially due to the fact that I understand what a lot of producers are going through.
Friesen says Manitobans need to be aware farmers are a small group in this province but play an important role, and he calls on everyone to show farmers a little empathy. Premier Wapkanu says the province is bringing in new measures to fight money laundering. Manitoba is directing all casinos to report suspicious activity directly to police. Until now, Manitoba Liquor and Lottery staff would make reports to FinTrack, the Financial Transaction and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. Canoe says the change will speed up investigations and increase oversight into financial crime.
Just the fact that these
that will help people build cases, that will help officers conduct investigations, and that will help to hold people accountable who are responsible for the scourge of toxic drugs that we're seeing, fentanyl and many other damaging drugs that we're seeing in our communities here in Manitoba.
The province will also add staff to its anti-money laundering team and spend $325,000 on new surveillance equipment. The chief of a First Nation in Western Manitoba is suing a recently appointed Manitoba Hydro board member for defamation. Gambler First Nation Chief David Ledoux alleges Vern Kalmakoff and others made false and malicious statements about him. The statement of claim says Ledoux was publicly accused of murdering a man and taking out a contract to have a woman killed. Ledoux says that is false. He says the comments happened after he refused to give the board member a special deal on a commercial lease on the Gambler Urban Reserve. The chief is seeking $750,000 plus damages. None of the allegations have been proven in court. And now to the Greek island of Santorini. People boarding a ship headed for the mainland. In recent days, there have been more than 200 underwater tremors in the immediate area of that island. They have all been relatively minor, but have touched off a number of landslides, and there are fears a major quake or tsunami could hit at any time. Planes and ferries are leaving the island around the clock. Schools in Santorini and some surrounding Greek islands have been closed for the week. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7, and you can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You know, Heather, you led the news talking about how the the booze, U.S. booze, is going back in the shelves. Some listeners are writing in saying they wish that wouldn't be happening. They kind of wish that it stayed off the shelves. Pedro Bedard wrote in, Trump has caved. Even so, we should always buy Canada first, and let's hope that any of the booze, U.S. booze, is never put back, and that we never order from U.S. sources until he's out of the White House. So, and there's actually a number of people writing saying that they feel like they wish that had continued. But of course, politically, you can't say you're negotiating and moving forward and accepting the 30-day pause and continue that. That would look like that you're not. So
right. It's all part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
They pull back, you pull back. But people really are seriously taking this challenge to buy local seriously.
They absolutely are. I'm going to share a couple more with you, Heather, here, because I think these are interesting. You and I, of course, been talking about this in the newsroom a lot. We asked about the view of your relationship with the United States. How do you view that relationship? Has it shifted? Abraham Reimer wrote in, overall, I've had an excellent relationship with the United States. They're our nearest allies and friends, and I go to the States 2 times a week, Abraham writes. I think Trump will tone down, and we should not overreact too much. I'm glad we still have Trudeau negotiating with him through meetings. I think this will be resolved in life, and life will go on as usual. So a different point of view there. And then Valerie Bruce saying, I'm fuming. And this is interesting, Heather, because I don't know about you, but Kev's got our comments up. Kev, can we go back to Heather on The View? I want to see Heather on YouTube when I'm asking her this question. I'll make sure you're still there. Thanks, Kev. I've been surprised by how emotional people have been around this. Maybe not surprised, but it's been notable. Valerie Bruce wrote in, I'm fuming. I don't think we should be kowtowing to him or calling him or creating czars of any kind. That just feels obscene, feeds his obscene need for turmoil and attention. And we just incorporate the fact that the beast to the south of us is unreliable, she writes. So she's using strong language, but that czar language isn't sitting all that well with some people that are writing to us.
Yeah, it is an unusual term, isn't it, to have a czar of anything.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to ask David McGuinty about that. He's on the program later, of course. Federal Public Safety Minister. He's going to be at the border today, so... all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get into what is happening in our regional forecast and move to the cold day ahead with Abby Adiemi.
Yep, a bitterly cold day ahead for the province with extreme cold warnings affecting the southwestern corner of Manitoba with frigid temperatures, wind chills in the valley of minus 40s and even beyond up to minus 45. But for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 22 at this time. Mostly it's clear outside. We should see a mix of sun and clouds today. That will stay with us throughout the day. Our highs would hit minus 18. Wind chills make it feel like minus 34 this morning. And then tonight, temperatures drops to around minus 20. Tomorrow we'll see some snow, about 5 centimeters of accumulation. So prepare for that. Similar condition in the Pembina Valley region. We're seeing temperatures around minus 25 at this time. Brandon is sitting at minus 29 with mainly clear skies. However, we have that extreme cold warning in effect for Brandon and surrounding areas with wind chills feeling close to minus 45 in some areas. So you want to prepare as you step out today. The high would hit minus 18. However, it's still going to stay very cold till the midday period. In the Parkland region, Dauphin and surrounding regions around minus 25. Clear conditions we're seeing. The wind chill also making it feel close to minus 45. That's improved by mid May Day, and we have that extreme cold warning in effect for the Parkland region as well. In the Interlake region, Gimli sitting at minus 26. Clear conditions we're seeing. We will see a mix of sun and clouds for folks in Gimli today. Highs will be around minus 18. Wind chills will be feeling like minus 37. For the Powerful Flon, Thompson and Churchill, all hovering around 27 and 28 at this time. Clear conditions we're seeing. Though Churchill is seeing ice crystals, the wind chill in that part of the province would be between minus 41 and even colder. So you want to prepare accordingly. So we have like cold conditions across the province today. However, Winnipeg, minus 22 at this time, heading to a high of minus 18.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, what's the commute like out there?
Pretty quiet overall, at least down south here in Winnipeg. I will say, if you're looking on Manitoba 511 right now, a lot of the highways pretty much from Swan River up to Thompson, Gillam, Lynn Lake are being reported as covered, partly covered, and with poor visibility. So if you're driving up north this morning, keep your wits about you. Might be a little bit treacherous. Otherwise, if you have any other updates for me, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. I can tell you the sidewalks on my run-in this morning were actually freshly plowed. So, but if they're not where you are, you can always give me a call. Let me know. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get to business news. Via Zoom, joining us again today is Neil Kumar with our report. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Marcy.
So obviously, U.S. President Donald Trump has hit pause on the tariffs on Canadian imports for 30 days and doing the same for Mexico. From your business point of view this morning, what's this look like?
Well, this comes after what was a crazy day on the markets yesterday, yet we're expecting them to be similar today. The pause was announced just hours after Trump said he would pause tariffs on imports from Mexico for 1 month. Following the call between Trump and Trudeau, Canada will now implement a $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology and personnel, enhanced coordination, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. In both cases, the pauses came after Canada and Mexico agreed to take steps toward preventing the trafficking of the deadly opioid into the U.S. Analysts say that this is not over by any means and that we should expect more demands from the U.S. as we approach March 4th. Taking a look at the overseas markets right now, Asia-Pacific markets rose today after learning Donald Trump paused tariffs on both Canada and Mexico for a month, as the U.S. had put a hold on proposed tariffs on its exports. And European stocks opened lower today as investors continue to monitor the developments in U.S. trade policy.
And what about China? We're hearing on World Report then, obviously, that China's hitting back.
That's right. U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed a new 10% tariff on Chinese goods entering the U.S., which has now prompted the Chinese Finance Ministry to fight back. Beijing has announced a package of tariffs on a range of U.S. products. The Chinese retaliation tariffs include 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas and 10% tariffs on American crude oil and agricultural machinery. The Ministry of Commerce and China's Customs Administration have also announced new export controls will be effective immediately on more than 24 metal products and related technologies.
We'll have political analysis, by the way, still ahead this half hour of the whole situation with the states. Let's turn to another business story here. Super Bowl ticket prices are plummeting. Why?
Well, it could be a case of Kansas City Chiefs fatigue among football fans. Right now, the cheapest ticket for Super Bowl 59 has fallen below $4,000 US on the secondary market. That's according to reseller TickPick, which has seen a 30% decline over the past week. And these tickets are more than 50% cheaper compared to last year's record-breaking Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, who face the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday, are hoping to make history by becoming the first team to win 3 consecutive Super Bowl rings. However, with that historic feat on the line, fans apparently aren't as excited to spend big bucks, and that Chiefs fatigue could very well be the main reason behind why the drop in ticket sales is taking place.
What are the numbers looking like this morning, Neil?
In Europe, Germany, France, and the UK are all down, and in Asia, Japan is up, Shanghai is down, and Hong Kong is up.
All right, thank you. We'll talk to you again.
Okay. You're very welcome. Thank you.
That's Neil Kumar, filling in for Christy Ramlakan via Zoom with us this morning on the program with Business News. Mainly clear, minus 22 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy over in Brandon, minus 29. You're under an extreme cold warning in Brandon, Killarney, Melita, Souris, Russell, all the way through Riding Mountain National Park. So your wind chills are going to feel values around like minus 40 or colder. That will continue in the Brandon area. Up in Thompson, it's mainly clear as well this morning. The current temperature is minus 27. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Corey Funk, Kevin Ipatebo, and Abby Adeyemi, all behind the glass. Thanks for joining us wherever you're joining us. on the air here on 89.3 on CBC or on YouTube. Well, it's not every day you get to talk about a new rock band from your city, but the Mercy Street is a new group from here in Winnipeg. They shared their debut EP on Friday featuring this song. It's called Crop Prices.
It's only self-preservation. Sometimes you cause a little pain. Crop prices kept on dropping, and I got tired of praying for the rain. And Mary whispered in the darkness outside, come out my place. I got a couple extra pills you can buy, make you sleep through the day. Drove down the crooked roads to my house. Roads winding like my brain. That's when the lightning struck inside my head. Maybe I could get away with it and finally pay my rent. And then I saw you in the darkness outside, take me away. I got a couple extra pills you can buy, make you sleep through the day. And then I saw you in the darkness outside, take me away. I got a couple extra pills you can buy, make you sleep through the day. Lead me through the night. If you never walked in darkness, you'd never see the light. Lead me through the night. If you never walked in darkness, you'd never see the light.
A new band from Winnipeg, the Mercy Street, new rock band. They shared their debut EP on Friday, as we were mentioning. This tune is called Crop Prices. It is now 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube.
your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news. Your news that matters. News that belongs to you. Your World Tonight. Every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1. On demand on the CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Well, there is some relief in Canada today. U.S. President Donald Trump hit pause on the 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. That news coming after the afternoon phone call, of course, between Trump and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The pause will be at least 30 days. And Ryan Tumulty's here, political reporter with the Toronto Star, to talk about where we go from here. Hello to you.
Hi there.
I want to read just a couple of comments to set up our conversation here, because Manitobans are really engaged, like hundreds and hundreds of comments. First about tariffs, then about counter tariffs. Now about a question I asked about the view of the states in our relationship, Ryan. So on this 30 days, Lauren Devlin says, when Trump says he's postponing the tariffs for 30 days, I see it the same as my employer warning of layoffs and then offering a, quote, short stay. It would be foolish to stop searching for another job. I'm glad to have 30 days to reset my compass. And then Grace Martell saying, no matter the outcome of these tariffs in 2025, I've already committed to no Starbucks, no U.S. food chains, no ordering from the U.S. local and Canadian as much as possible. And I've not traveled to the U.S. since his first presidency, and I will not now. So a lot of Canadians saying, they're going to really be either keeping habits that they've already changed or, are being cautiously moving forward here. What do we actually know about this conversation, about the 30-day pause, the conversation between Trump and Trudeau that led to this?
Yeah, I mean, it was two conversations, actually. And the end result was that Canada agreed to take some more steps on the border. So we're going to designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorist groups. We are going to put $200 million towards some kind of joint task force with the U.S. to focus on fentanyl. We're going to keep resources at the border, sort of continue with the plan that the federal government already outlined in December. But definitely the goal here is to give Trump the ability to see that we're taking the border seriously and that we're going to take these issues seriously.
How are governments at all levels reacting to the news, including the opposition parties then?
Yeah, so, we've seen from premiers right across the country, certainly Wapkanu in Manitoba, talking about canceling contracts and things like that. That language has all disappeared. I think most of the premiers have walked back those promises to cancel contracts. But certainly I think there's still a lot of trepidation. I mean, you talked about the comments you were reading from listeners there. This is just a reprieve. And so I think people are concerned. I think, governments are concerned that in 30 days we're going to be in the exact same place with the exact same set of demands and the exact same potential tariffs coming in. So, we're not really, I don't think anyone is seeing this as the end of this fight.
What do you do politically in terms of exploring new trading relationships without giving the message to Trump that you're exploring new trading relationships? I mean, how tricky is it to walk that line?
Yeah, I mean, the federal government will tell you, Prime Minister Trudeau mentions this in his speeches all the time, that Canada is the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. So the trading relationships are actually already in place. The government has done that work. I think what hasn't happened is Canadian businesses. Canadian businesses have not necessarily jumped on some of these trading opportunities and these new deals. I think on some part because we had a stable customer in the U.S., the largest market in the world. And I think there was a desire to sort of, keep going with what was working. I think a lot of Canadian businesses, you talk about Canadian consumers, boycotting restaurant chains, and I'm certainly, if that's what people want to do, that's great. But the big change for the U.S. would be if Canadian businesses started looking elsewhere to do business, so looking to Europe, those sorts of things, because that would really change the relationship if we had more customers.
What is your sense of what Trump was actually after here? I mean, keeping in mind he can change his mind as well about this pause, but I mean, his motivation seems to have shifted about 3 or 4 times here, and there is obviously deep concern that this is about our sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, I think his motivation will continue to shift, and I don't think we should expect sort of, clear statements from him over the next 30 days. Obviously the fentanyl issue, the border issues, these have been central to his identity as a politician since he first burst onto the stage. But I think there's other things here at work in the tariffs, and we've heard him talk about them openly, even when I think maybe he regrets it. But he's talked about wanting to use tariffs to raise revenue, to fill the U.S. government's coffers, and to be able to offer tax cuts to Americans and American companies. He's talked about rebuilding manufacturing in the U.S. through tariffs. I think these border issues are a real hindrance to him, but they are not the sole reason that he's pursuing this sort of economic agenda.
I want to throw something else at you here, Ryan, because a lot of listeners are writing, including Peter Harvey, who wrote to us on our thread on Facebook around this. They're asking about whether or not this is going to be a real moment where we lean into strengthening the interprovincial trade, free trade between provinces. What's your sense of that and how that's being discussed right now?
Yeah, certainly a lot of that. Those conversations have happened in the past few weeks, and I think there's a fair amount of interest in it. You've even heard some more talk about east-west pipelines in Canada to trade our oil and gas in different directions. I think what's interesting is these trade barriers that we talk about. They're not ironclad rules that say someone in Manitoba can't sell to someone in New Brunswick. They're regulations. They're rules about how that trade has to operate that are different, that make that trading relationship hard. So it's not necessarily, dug in principles on certain things. It's details about like what needs to be in a first aid kit and how long a trucker can drive and what kind of training they need. And those are things I think that, no one wants to dig into the weeds, but given a big push like we're seeing right now, there might be an opportunity for someone to finally say, you know what, actually, we do need to solve these problems.
People are writing to us this morning about liquor, about the wine industry, about dairy, between provinces, and speaking to some of, as you said, the regulations maybe is more the correct language versus trade between provinces. Appreciate you. Thank you. We've got David McGinty on a little bit later. He's going to be in Manitoba today at the border, so be interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
That's Ryan Tumult. He joins us most Tuesday mornings. Here's a regular interview with us. He's a political reporter with the Toronto Star, and that has been Ottawa Report. David McGinty, of course, the federal public safety minister, so we'll ask him all the questions about all things border today. That's live later. Right now, let's get a live update from Heather Wells in our news center on other Manitoba stories.
Good morning. Yes, it has been a busy couple of days for workers at Manitoba liquor marts. They are now restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Rob Canoe says the province will undo orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. The move, of course, after Donald Trump granted Canada a 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs. Now, this pause on U.S. tariffs has brought some temporary relief to Manitoba's pork industry. Scott Peters is a hog producer west of Steinbach, raises thousands of pigs every year. Peter says Manitoba's relationship with the U.S. pork industry is very intertwined, and he hopes the threat of tariffs will end before the 30-day pause does. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, it shouldn't take a trade war to get people to buy local. That's a perspective from a business owner here in Winnipeg. One of the owners of Patent 5 Distillery is going to join us in the next hour of the show for his perspective on all of this. In addition, we'll look at where the Buy Canada movement is left now. That the 30-day pause has been given. As you've already heard, some of you are writing to us saying your habits have shifted because of this, and they'll remain shifted. So if you want to weigh in on that, you can also call us 788-3205. Plus, we have an interview coming up at 7:40. We're going to get a preview of the Winnipeg Contemporary Dancers' latest show. It explores the vulnerability and the wisdom that comes with the later years and the journey of getting older. So not an interview, pardon me. We have an item on that coming up at 7:40. Minus 22, really cold in Winnipeg today, a high of minus 18, similar to yesterday. Nice, beautiful, sunny sky. But maybe you want to stay inside and look at it because with wind chill, it'll feel like minus 34. Extreme cold warning for Brandon, Southwest, and then also up through Riding Mountain. Wind chills around minus 40 for the day. World Report's next.
Today on The Current.
And it's a very small community of 300 people, completely isolated in that we don't have road access.
Labrador is a place of dramatic coastlines and sweeping barrens, but for the Inuk photographer Eldred Allen, it also means home and the people who live there. Eldred Allen on showing the rest of Canada, the real beauty of Nunatsiavut, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canadians are breathing a cautious sigh of relief now that U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods have been put on pause. Here's BC Premier David Eby.
If we can avoid these tariffs, we should. But we won't do so at the expense of our sovereignty.
U.S. President Donald Trump's repeated calls to make Canada the 51st state are not sitting well with some politicians, but as Kate McKenna tells us, the official message out of Ottawa is focused on improving border security and stopping these tariffs from ever taking effect.
We are obviously pleased to see this development, but we have more work to do.
Public Safety Minister David McGuinty says the 30-day pause on Donald Trump's proposed tariffs is good news, but the threat isn't over yet.
The President expressed concerns, we listened, but we're working now jointly, hand in hand, especially when it comes to this scourge and this tragedy surrounding fentanyl.
Trump threatened massive tariffs unless Canada curbs the flow of fentanyl and migrants over its southern border. In December, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau proposed a $1.3 billion border plan. Yesterday, he agreed to spend another $200 million to fight organized crime and fentanyl trafficking. He also announced plans to list cartels as terrorist organizations and appoint a fentanyl czar. McGuinty told CBC's Power and Politics what that job could look like.
So the fentanyl czar is really about following the fentanyl and finding out where it's coming from, what the sources are.
But the president only granted a 1-month reprieve. It's unclear what would dissuade him from tariffs completely. Entrepreneur Wes Hall says the Canadian economy should be less reliant on trade with the United States.
We have a lot of people around the world who want to do business with us. Now is time that we have serious conversations with those folks and diversify.
The White House took credit for forcing Canada's hand, saying in just 2 weeks, Trump has advanced America's interests around the globe. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada and Mexico may have escaped U.S. tariffs for now, but China has not. It has now filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization and is retaliating with its own tariffs and export controls. For more, I'm joined by Yenna Li in Beijing. And Yenna, take us through the Chinese government's countermeasures.
A 15% tax on U.S. coal, 10% on goods such as crude oil, farm equipment, and pickup trucks. These are just some of the U.S. imports that face new Chinese tariffs. China also announced export curbs on 5 critical minerals, metals that are crucial to technology and innovation. Beijing argues that this is just a response to Washington's actions as the U.S. slapped an additional 10% tax on all Chinese goods first. Now, this situation doesn't have to lead to further escalation and further escalation. On the contrary, it appears both sides are actually entering a round of negotiations. These new tit-for-tat Chinese tariffs are set to start on February 10th. So there is some time and some space for discussion still. According to the White House, a call between Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping could take place in the coming days.
Trump has threatened to raise his tariffs if Beijing doesn't try to stop fentanyl from being illegally shipped to the United States. Is the Chinese government doing anything to address that concern?
It has. If before Beijing had turned a blind eye to this industry, under the Biden administration, counter-narcotics had become a rare area of cooperation between the US and China. In fact, last year, Chinese officials started cracking down on money laundering, and in general, new regulations to curb the export of what's known as precursor chemicals for fentanyl were put in place. But now, China is warning that a trade war could harm future collaboration on this issue.
Thank you, Yenna.
Thanks.
Yenna Li, reporting from Beijing. The trade tensions between Canada and the U.S. have some border cities particularly on edge. Windsor, Ontario shares close economic ties with Detroit, Michigan. As the CBC's Lisa Xing reports, the tariffs are delayed, but people are still worried in both cities.
Our neighbors and members of our community are deeply affected.
In Windsor, uncertainty hangs over the border city. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs paused but not canceled.
For 100 years, we've been integrating economies, and we have this madman as a president coming on board and wants to destroy it.
I think once the dust settles, I think everything will be fine. I think there's too many Chicken Littles running around and they keep hitting the panic button.
But the dust is far from settled, and that's bad for businesses that rely on border traffic. Abe Taktak is the president of Windsor-Detroit Tunnel Duty Free. He's seen fewer people crossing lately.
This is ground zero for the impact of these tariffs. Windsor, Ontario, and if you're a border business like the duty-free shops are, it's going to be double to ground zero.
That traffic may not increase anytime soon as Canada and the U.S. negotiate over the next month. Also feeling uneasy, the auto industry, inextricably connecting the two countries.
We're concerned and we hope that calmer heads will prevail.
Glenn Stevens is a former auto worker and head of Mish Auto, a statewide industry association headquartered in Detroit. He says both countries will suffer if tariffs do come into effect.
If it's prolonged, it's going to wind up in the showroom on the vehicle sticker price for the consumer. And if that demand goes down, it goes backwards into the supply chain and jobs are lost.
A reality that looms over an increasingly tenuous relationship. Lisa Sheng, CBC News, Detroit.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with Donald Trump today in Washington. The focus is the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. It began January 19th. The CBC's Sasha Petrusek has the latest from Jerusalem.
Bulldozers dig through Gaza's rubble as its people scramble to make the most of a pause in this war, which may not last beyond the next few weeks. Much more aid is arriving by the truckload, but it's not enough, say Palestinians waiting for bread and tents. We are camped out in graveyards, says Abu Gamal. Whether the ceasefire continues depends much on today's meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington.
And I will stop the chaos in the Middle East. There's another thing, Israel.
Trump pressured Israel into the ceasefire's first phase and reportedly wants war to end for good in the second. Netanyahu says he does too, if only to bring the rest of Israel's dozens of hostages home.
In this meeting, we'll deal with important issues, critical issues facing Israel and our region, a victory over Hamas, achieving the release of all our hostages.
But those are contradictory goals. So far, Israel has not been able to destroy Hamas, despite nearly 16 months of conflict and intense pressure from Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners, who insist the war resume. The question now is, will there be enough pressure from Trump to continue the ceasefire? Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Netanyahu has made the trip to D.C. despite a warrant for his arrest from the International Criminal Court. In November, the court issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu, his former defense minister, and a former Hamas commander. The criminal court is citing allegations of war crimes. It is unlikely Netanyahu will face arrest during his visit. Last month, the U.S. sanctioned the ICC over the warrant issued against Netanyahu. The United States is not a member of the International Criminal Court. Nova Scotia is turning its focus to natural resources. The government wants to make it easier for companies to mine for critical minerals. It's an effort to boost the local economy and make the province more self-reliant. But as Taryn Grant reports, there are limits to the province's influence on the decisions in the mining industry.
The potential that we have, the natural resource potential that we have in this province, and it is very, very significant.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston says the doors are open to resource development. John Whiteman is a prospector and geologist who has mineral claims all over Nova Scotia. He says the Premier's message is welcome, even if the details are not yet clear.
It is a shining light in the darkness of the last 40 years.
But Whiteman says it's not the province that's usually the biggest barrier to opening a mine.
Money. It's always money.
Whiteman is the majority owner of a lithium project that was making strides when lithium prices peaked in 2022. But by 2023, lithium prices had plummeted, and the project was put on hold. Whiteman is still waiting for another shift in demand before restarting the exploration work. He's hopeful the province will streamline its permitting process so that when investors come knocking again, the project will be able to move quickly. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
And that is the latest from World Report. If you are trying to make staying informed a daily habit, you can follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown with the show or live on YouTube if you're watching. Another cold day ahead. Thank you for joining us this morning on the program. This hour, I'll tell you who else is going to be joining us, a business owner in studio. We're going to hear more about the tariffs threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump, which are on pause, as you know, for 30 days. In response, Premier Wab Kinew says American alcohol will not be pulled from shelves today, but we're going to hear from a local distiller who says he hopes that Canadians will still buy local. And we're going to look at that movement to buy Canadian and how it's shifted because of all of this and where it's going next. So we have an interview on that coming up as well. And in addition, we'll find out about a dance production that's about to be on stage locally that embraces the journey of getting older. Right now, though, to Heather Wells for our headlines.
Good morning. Well, workers at Manitoba liquor marts are restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Wab Kinew says the province will undo its orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. after Donald Trump granted Canada that 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs. Kinew says the pause proves Manitoba's stand against Trump worked. Casinos in Manitoba will now be required to report suspected money laundering directly to police. Up until now, Manitoba Liquor and Lottery staff would report suspicious activity to the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. President Trump has accused Canada of allowing drug smuggling and money laundering. Premier Kinew says yesterday's announcement wasn't in response to threats from the U.S., but he says if it strengthens the relationship, it's a win-win. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
A quick look at the weather. Here's Abby.
It's going to be cold across board. Southern part of the province will be experiencing extreme cold temperatures this morning. We do have that cold warning in effect for the southwestern regions from Brandon all the way down to Verdun. The wind chill feels like minus 45 this morning. Those regions already seeing temperatures close to minus 28. However, Winnipeg, we are at minus 22.
And Corey, the commute?
The only issues I can kind of see out there is Manitoba 501 reporting poor visibility and covered and partly covered conditions pretty much right across northern Manitoba this morning on the highways. So be careful if you are hitting the highway this morning up there. Otherwise, down here, haven't heard of any major issues, but if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, as we've been sharing this morning, a lot of you are going to continue buying Canadian. Grace Martel, just to reiterate here, wrote in saying no matter of the outcome of the tariffs in 2025, for me, no more Starbucks, she writes, no U.S. food chains, no ordering from the U.S., local and Canadian as much as possible. That's just one sample of the comments that have been coming in this morning in Manitoba. Well, let's lean into the Buy Canadian movement and where it's at and how it's shifted because of what has been happening politically with the states. We have retail analyst Bruce Winder with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So what is your thought on where the movement is right now? Because in recent days, obviously growing enthusiasm, as you've heard here in Manitoba, some people saying they're still going to keep going with this. How do you see the pause on tariffs and what it might mean for that movement?
I think for the most part, the movement is going to continue. You know, some people might sort of back off a little bit, but I think for the most part, it's going to continue. I mean, we're not out of the woods yet. We only bought a month. We did a lot of stuff just to buy a month. So, you know, this could get a lot worse. So I think Canadians are awakened now, and we all realize we have to get behind our country.
Does it really make a difference? I think some Canadians, might be thinking, okay, so I'm making this choice at the grocery store. What does it take for a movement like this to really make be heard?
Well, I think let's face it, I mean, we're a small economy versus the U.S., so we're not going to cripple the U.S. economy, but we're going to be a bit of a thorn in the side to some companies in the U.S. that sell into Canada. They're going to feel it a little bit. They're going to take notice, and maybe they'll put some pressure on the Trump administration to do things different.
From the retail point of view, what's the reaction been on that side? Are retailers, do you think, going to change some of how they market their products and position themselves maybe overtly as, hey, guess what, we are Canadian?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think retailers, we've already seen clips of companies putting shelf signs for Canadian product. I know Loblaw CEO came out on the weekend and did a post saying where they're going to proactively try to source even more of their products from Canadian suppliers. So I think that, Amazon, I think, is working on some things too. And they have, thousands of Canadian suppliers as well. So I think whoever you are, whether you're Canadian or American, you're trying to highlight the fact that you have Canadian companies in your supply chain, Canadian workers you're helping. And that's really what retailers are doing right now.
Can you outline sort of, during the pandemic, of course, we had the Buy Local movement, which gained a lot of momentum. How is Buy Canadian different?
A little different in the scope and magnitude. During the pandemic, Buy Local was mostly, okay, buy from a small company in my neighborhood. Now we're looking at Canadian, supporting Canadian companies, whether they're small, medium, or large, and also supporting companies coast to coast, right? So I think the magnitude is a lot bigger this time around.
What's the hardest for us to buy Canadian? What are people going to run into if they start to, pay attention to their purchasing habits?
I think, they're going to realize that it's not as cut and dry as they might think. So 50, 60 years ago, it was very cut and dry. You're either a Canadian or an American company. Now with NAFTA and CUSMA and globalization, all of the country's supply chains are intertwined. So you might find that, a product might be Canadian, but it uses U.S. ingredients. Or it's an American company, but they make it in Canada. So I think the best bet for people is to try to find out what's made in Canada, processed in Canada, et cetera. That's probably your best bet.
What are people going to realize about cost overall if they do make the shift?
Yeah, in some cases, the Canadian items will be more expensive. In some cases, they're going to be cheaper. So it's going to be sort of hit or miss. And I think everyone realizes, look, for some people, they might not be able to afford to buy, Canadian. So I think everyone is just doing what they can based on their budget.
Can you help us logically understand why something made in a country that we're purchasing it in will be more expensive?
Yeah, if we're purchasing it in the country, it all depends. If you're going to buy something in Canada, Canada has higher labor costs. Canada has more regulation. Canada has higher geographical dispersion. Canada has less population density. So it's more expensive to do business in Canada and to run a Canadian company than it is in America, say as an example.
Yeah. Do you think that some people are also writing in on the thread that I was reading from a lot of Manitobans engaging, as you can imagine, all Canadians are in this. But some people are saying, let's remind ourselves that it's not just about buying Canadian, but it's about buying other than, about not buying American. You can buy other countries. Are you noticing that also, where people are talking about when they're looking at where they're going to support?
Not really. I haven't seen that. It's an interesting point, interesting comment. But I think a lot of folks are just using this as an example, as a moment to try to sort of switch from America to Canada. And I haven't seen a lot about other countries, but it's a fair point.
Well, what will you be watching most closely with the movement to buy Canadian as the negotiations then continue? And of course, we have this 30-day pause.
I'll be watching what other countries do. So an example, China put tariffs on the U.S. last night. I'll be watching Mexico's reaction and negotiation. I'll be watching President Trump. I'll be watching our prime minister and their office, and also watching key economic indicators like inflation, unemployment, GDP growth, and things like that.
Anything to add that I haven't asked you about, Bruce? Is this an evolving target, this conversation?
No, I just hope the worst is over, but I have a feeling it's not.
Thanks very much for being with us this morning.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.
You too. Via Zoom, that's Bruce Winder, retail analyst. It is 7:18, and if you want to weigh in on your shopping habits, you can also write to us at radio893@cbc.ca.
Hi, I'm Paul Havershood, host of The Cost of Living, a national business show that looks at everything the world of money touches, which, admittedly, is a lot of stuff.
The Cost of Living. Go beyond the facts and figures and discover the compelling business stories that affect the day-to-day lives of Canadians right across the country. Economics, business, and you. The Cost of Living with host Paul Havershrud. Available now on CBC Listen.
Time right now is 7:20 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And you might want to go to YouTube to see what my buddy Corey Funk is up to here, because you'll get an image of what he's just put on. What are you wearing?
Oh, is it cold in here? Or is it just me? I just got this. I got this blanket that it starts in a bag and then now it's around me and it's so cozy.
I like that. It's
Thank
a
you.
CBC
And
travel
it's a branded
blanket.
CBC Manitoba blanket.
I like your shirt too.
I also got
What's
this
that
shirt.
about?
It's well, there's this Ironman curling company. I heard that you're going to be curling in it.
And the Bonspiel. Well, quote unquote curling. I don't think I've ever curled a proper name in my life.
Attempting to curl.
Attempting to curl on the Red River this weekend.
And that's what's happening, and that's why we got this whole prize pack here of 2 mugs,
nice,
and socks and a notepad.
Oh, I like it.
Lots of goodies because the Ironman curling giveaway. We're one of the sponsors.
You have Prices Right in your future, showing all the prizes. You're doing a good job there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All of those things that we're mentioning, I mean, really, honestly, really cute. The CBC toque and the Ironman curling shirt and the blanket.
I forgot about the toque.
Yeah.
It's on my head.
And there's socks, too.
Yeah.
So I don't know how flexible you are, if you can put it on your foot and get you. Oh, good. Did you? Well, all of this is up for grabs. And we'll tell you how you can enter the contest in a moment. Well, I'll tell you now. What you have to do is enter a heartwarming story about curling. Now, as I outlined, I am curling on the CBC team this weekend. I think we're called CBC Stone Cold or something. That's our name.
Ooh, wow, scary, so intimidating.
Cheesy. It's like a non-profit event that raises money for Heart and Stroke, and we're like, Stone Cold. At any rate, I haven't curled in years, but it is such a sport that always brings to mind a community and, small town rivers, backyard rinks, or maybe it's your small town curling club. And so we thought we'd ask for heartwarming stories about curling. But I didn't really realize before I asked you off air this morning, and we mentioned that we had this coming up in the show, that you were like a skip on your team back in the day.
Yeah, I skipped my high school team. And then I also pretty much grew up at the Elmwood Curling Club. My parents curled there. And then I curled there as a teenager for 3-4 years or so. And yeah, it was started off as a league. We actually won our league the first year when I was a lead. But then, I ended up kind of doing some third and some skipping. And
what do you enjoy about it?
It's just fun. I think I'm a social guy. I like that's a social sport. Like when you're not playing, you're kind of just like chatting, hanging around, and that's actually that's kind of my vibe.
Having a time,
having a time, exactly. I actually knew it's kind of a heartwarming story, but it's kind of awesome. Every year around Christmas time, they would have a turkey curl. I don't know if you've ever done this before, where you get a frozen turkey, and you have to push it down the ice, and then you have to try to get close to the button and gets to keep the turkey. And I won it one year. It was awesome. So I felt so good. Yeah.
Just one turkey or
I think they had a few turkeys. I think they had 3 or 4. And everyone gets a shot. You start the hack, you have this giant frozen turkey, you push down.
Do you use rocks
ice.
At all, or is it just like frozen turkeys hitting frozen turkeys?
No, it's just one singular frozen turkey. Then they have to send the turkey back after every shot. So by the end, the turkey's kind of got some, like the bottom is kind of scraped up. But you get to take it home. I got to take home a big turkey because I got it close. I got it right bang on the button. I wasn't that great at getting rocks, but give me a turkey, I can get on the button, no problem.
I love this story. So there's an example, folks. What's your heartwarming story about curling? This is to get you amped up and excited, and maybe to get you to support some of the teams involved, or come out and support some of the teams involved in the Bonspiel, the Ironman Bonspiel that's happening, a curling Bonspiel this weekend. So it's outdoors, a CBC a proud sponsor, and we have 2 prize packs to give away with all this swag, and that's how you enter. You send us a heartwarming curling story. So you can call us with that story, or you can email us with it. If you email us, it is win@cbc.ca, win@cbc.ca. If you call us, you call 204-788-3205. That's our listener line, 788-3205, with a heartwarming story about curling. You have until noon today to enter, because tomorrow we're going to share those stories here on the air, and we will announce the winners. So good luck, and hurry hard.
Dreaming about you, sinking into my bed. Dizzy, I see stars all around my head, lifting me up to the moon and back again. You're my lucky penny, yeah, you just make sense. I like to keep my cool, but you're divine. Mother Nature must have taken her time. Come on, take me away, I'll let you drive. You're water and lemon over ice. It's late, but I want to stay. I'm feeling I can't explain. My ego's melting wishing there were more days in a week. It's late, but I want to stay. A feeling I can't explain. My ego's melting away. I see everything in slow motion, like a movie scene. All the heavens suddenly open.
Alessia Cara in Slow Motion. Scott Regier is joining us in Morning Sports now. 7:25 is the time. Minus 22 is the temperature. How are you today, Scott?
I am well. How are you?
Good. Why don't we start in the NHL, where national anthems are once again front and center?
Yeah. In the wake of the Trump administration's potential trade tariffs, Marcy, Canadian fans booed the Star-Spangled Banner on Sunday night. Well, last night in Nashville, where Ottawa was facing the Predators, American spectators returned the favor.
Our home and native land, true.
So the behavior of the crowd in Nashville upset many of the players in the game, including Predators forward and Quebec City native Jonathan Marchessault.
The anthem is not made for political views. It's made for respecting the veterans in both countries. And I think at the end of the day, we're respecting the veterans and the people that defend our countries. And it's bigger than just trying to give a shot to the other country. I think people need to think a little further than that.
Marchessault making an excellent point about anthems being a way to honor veterans in both countries. It is worth noting, Marcy, that by the end of last night's performance of O Canada in Nashville, there were more cheers than there were boos.
Meantime, Jets back on the ice tonight trying to maintain their winning streak. Some people in town, Jets fans pretty excited right now.
Yeah, and there's justifiable reason for that. Since losing to Utah in Salt Lake City, a result that head coach Scott Arniel called the most embarrassing of the season, the Jets have done nothing but win, Marcy. And that streak, well, we'll see. It could be in jeopardy tonight. They face the Carolina Hurricanes, who have been the hottest team in the league for the last month. One thing to look out for tonight, can Mark Scheifele get a goal? If he does that, he'll become the franchise leader outright. Head coach Scott Arniel was asked about his top-line center's ability to put the puck in the net.
Where Scheif has gone with his game, he's really turned into an all-around player. He always liked to pass the puck, and he liked to do that first, but he realizes now that he's getting himself into some grade A positions, and he has a great shot. And I think this year that line has worked real well to make sure that whoever the threat is, that they take those shots, and that's what Mark's doing this year. He's got himself in a position way more where he's got quality looks, and he's got a heck of a shot and a heck of a release.
Yeah, it should be noted, Marcy, that the goal-scoring record only applies to this iteration of the Jets. Scheifele still has a way to go to catch the Jets' 1.0 leader. That, of course, the late, great Dale Hawerchuk. Puck drop tonight is at 7 o'clock.
And it's going to be a big day in skiing, hey?
Yeah, the beginning of the World Alpine Championships from Austria, where a lot of the attention, it seems as ever, is on Lindsey Vonn, with her having turned 40 and having endured a litany of serious injuries, Marcy. Vonn has still come out of retirement, a decision many are questioning, including Olympic champion Michaela Dorfmeister, who suggested on Austrian TV recently that Vonn needs to see a psychologist, and she quipped, "Does she want to kill herself?" Well, Vonn, who's had knee replacement surgery and says she finally feels healthy again, explains that her comeback is about the love of her sport.
I'm not here to prove anything. I have a completely free mind. I'm skiing because I enjoy skiing. There's literally no other reason I'm here. That changes the way you view things. World Championships and Olympics are about managing pressure and expectation, and I don't have those right now. I honestly don't even know where I will place. I could be 10th, and honestly, that's fine. I'm far ahead of where I ever expected to be.
Yeah, it's about as zen as you will ever hear Lindsey Vonn. But she has shown on the slopes, Marcy, she still possesses that fighting spirit. She finished 6th in the downhill, 4th in the Super G in Austria last month. Vonn says a lot of women her age are very happy with what she's doing, and that, quote-unquote, just because we're 40 doesn't mean it's over. CBC is going to live stream the World Championships all week long, starting today.
When you also do a sport at that level, pretty hard to retire, right?
Yeah, if you've been doing it your whole life. And yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
That's Scott Reguer with Morning Sports. Coming up, we're going to find out about a dance production that embraces the journey of getting older. Speaking of which, that's coming up right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 22 in downtown Winnipeg, but minus 27 right now at the airport. Layer up. It is a cold one. A high today of minus 18 with a risk of frostbite, a mix of sun and clouds through the day. Workers at Manitoba liquor marts are restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Wab Kinew says the province will undo its orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. The move comes after Donald Trump granted Canada a 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs. Kinew says the pause proves Manitoba's stand against Trump worked, and he hopes people continue to buy local, including Canadian alcohol.
For those who are fans of American booze, I can tell you we'll be putting those back on the shelves. And the work that was being undertaken to pull them from the shelves is now being reversed.
Kinew says Manitoba needs to diversify its markets to sell to European Union and Asia. He says his cabinet will not move forward with plans to restrict U.S. companies from winning contracts to supply goods and services to the province. Now, the 30-day pause on tariffs has come as a relief to many Manitobans. Kevin Rebeck is president at the Manitoba Federation of Labour. He says workers do continue to feel uncertainty.
A 30-day pause is good news, but it's not great news. We still have a very real threat of many people's livelihoods and jobs. So we're deeply concerned about that. And I think while that may kick things down the road a little bit, it won't change some of the things that we need to be prepared to do to protect good jobs here in Manitoba.
Rebeck is part of the province's newly formed U.S. Trade Council. It met with the Premier and community leaders yesterday discussing Manitoba's response to the tariff threats. Rebeck says it's important moving forward to ensure the province invests in businesses and puts more Manitobans to work. Manitoba's pork industry welcomes news of this 30-day pause on tariffs. Scott Peters is a hog producer west of Steinbach. He raises thousands of pigs every year. Peters says the decision to impose tariffs felt like a gut punch. He says the province's pork sector is highly reliant on its relationship in the U.S.
I'm worried. I'm concerned for the people that work in the industry. I feel like there's maybe could potentially be a good outcome here at some point. But if this thing lasts for like several months or several years, then we're in all kinds of trouble.
Peters is relieved there's a pause for now. Manitoba Pork says the threat of tariffs has already had an impact. The industry group says some contracts with U.S. partners were expected and not signed, and some shipments of live animals have been delayed. Now, ongoing uncertainty around the threat of tariffs is causing stress, as we've been hearing, for farmers in this province. Jerry Friesen is the founder of the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program. It provides free counseling services for farmers.
At this point, many farmers that are dependent on the export market are sitting back and feeling this stress because they don't know what the final result will be. And clearly, it can have a significant impact on finances, and so that in itself becomes a huge stress.
Friesen says the wellness program offers a safe place to talk and can help people manage stress and relationships. Now, Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs on China have now drawn a response from Beijing. China says it has prepared to put 10 to 15% tariffs on a wide range of American exports, from coal, natural gas, and crude oil to agricultural machinery and auto parts. Beijing says the countermeasures will take effect next Monday. It also says it's launching an investigation into Google, saying it may be in violation of global antitrust laws. You can hear the latest coming up on World Report at 8. Casinos in Manitoba will now be required to report suspected money laundering directly to police. Up until now, Manitoba Liquor and Lottery staff would report suspicious activity to FinTrack, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. President Trump has accused Canada of allowing drug smuggling and money laundering. Premier Wab Kinew says yesterday's announcement was not in response to the threats from the U.S.
If we can do this at a time where strengthening the relationship with the United States of America and the American people, well, then I think that's a win-win, as we could call it.
The province will also add staff and equipment to its anti-money laundering team and spend $325,000 on new surveillance equipment. The chief of Gambler First Nation is suing a member of Manitoba Hydro's board of directors for comments made on Facebook during Zoom meetings. The lawsuit says the false and malicious comments started after Chief David Ledoux refused to give Vern Kalmakoff a special deal on a commercial lease. Kalmakoff and 3 other Gambler First Nation members are alleged to have made the defamatory statements accusing Ledoux of committing crimes. Ledoux is seeking $750,000 plus damages. Adrian Salem, the minister who recommended Kalmakoff's appointment to Manitoba Hydro's board, says he can't comment because the matter is before the court. None of the allegations have been proven and no statements of defense have been filed. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's get to what's going on in our regional forecast now. Abby has a look at the maps, which we'll also put up, of course. Kevin will pop those up on YouTube, and we'll get through what's going to be another cold one.
It's not changed. It's still bitterly cold across the province with extreme cold warnings in effect for southern and western regions of the province, with frigid temperatures making it even feel much colder. For Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 22 at the Fox at this time. Mostly clear, some clouds rolling in. The wind chills making it feel like minus 34 this morning, though we expect a high of minus 18. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley regions with temperatures around minus 25 at this time. The wind chill for Modern Winkler all the way down the U.S. border, we're seeing the wind chills around minus 34. Heading west in Westman, we're seeing extreme cold warnings in effect. Brandon is sitting at minus 29 at this time. Clear skies we're seeing. However, the wind chill this morning feels like minus 40. Conditions will improve as we get close to midday. We see a high of minus 18. However, the wind chill is something you need to take into consideration as it will remain harsh till that time of the day. In the Parkland region, extreme cold warning also in effect. Dauphin and surrounding areas, we're seeing chilly minus 25 at this time. With the wind chill factored in, it feels like minus 40, though that should improve by midday, and we will see highs near minus 18. In the Interlake region, Gimli sitting at minus 27. Clear conditions also we are seeing in that part of the province. With the wind chill factored in, it feels like minus 37 this morning. We're also going to see a high of minus 18. In the Power Flin Flon, we're seeing temperatures hovering near minus 27, 28 at this time. Clear conditions we're seeing. However, the wind chill feels like minus 34 this morning. Expect a high of minus 19. Traveling up north, Thompson sitting at minus 28. Clear conditions we're seeing with wind chills making it feel close to minus 41 this morning. Expect a high of minus 20 and then it drops to minus 30 this afternoon. The wind chill is going to be something to take into consideration. Similar conditions we're seeing in Churchill, minus 28 ice crystals, a chance of light snow later, a good chance of light snow for that part of the province today. The wind chill making it feel like minus 41. So across board, it's extremely cold. Temperatures ranging from minus 22 to minus 30, and the wind chill feeling close to minus 45 in most of the regions.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
So bundle up if you're taking the bus and you're standing out there. If you're biking, of course, you need that face guard, probably balaclava. What's the actual commute like, Corey?
I actually haven't heard of any major issues, at least here in the city or anywhere in the province for that matter. I'll let folks know that if you are driving on the highways up north, pretty much from the Paw right up to Thompson, Lynn Lake, Gillum area, pretty much all those highways in North Manitoba this morning are being reported as poor visibility, covered, partly covered, so might be a bit treacherous for you up north. Other than that, if you do see something going on down here, if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, give me a call, 204-788-3093. All
right, thanks, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Well, there is wisdom and vulnerability that comes with aging. And up next on the show, a solo dance show happening this upcoming weekend explores all of that by putting a spotlight on the golden years.
They say age is just a number. I'm Shanley Vidal, and I'm here at the Rachel Brown Theatre, where aging is being expressed through dance. The production is called Old, and it stars a woman whose dance career spans more than 50 years. Margie Gillis started dancing at the age of 3, and now in her 70s, she's using her body movements to reframe how we think about the journey of becoming a senior. She co-created a solo show called Old, and will be performing it for the Winnipeg Contemporary Dancers' current season.
Aging is tough. It's hard. There's a lot of pain and things falling apart and disease and loss of friends and things. And but what are the wisdoms? What are the joys of this experience? Sitting in Sorrow is done on the Victorian couch, divan, and it's just being with the sadness and letting the sadness dance itself until the sadness releases you and you move on to some joy. So the set is just full of toys and teacups and feet on roller skates and mirrors and captain's hats and old beat-up frames. And a lot of the set is from my family home. My great-grandfather was a minister, so there's a lot of Victorian furniture that's all broken and smashed, and a lot of three-legged chairs, which I dance with and move with and crawl through.
Winnipeg-based visual artist Randall Newman collaborated with Gillis to create Old. He also designed the set, a carefully jumbled pile of antique home decor and furniture that is now worse for wear.
And I began to think of it as in terms of colonialism and how these things would have been at one time very prized possessions and very beautiful, but over the decades and over the years and over the history of lives, they've broken down, not unlike the situation that we find ourselves in today. Where they're broken, I've marked them with gold leaf on the pieces because it was kind of like an injury that maybe we could heal. So there's things that highlight, the brokenness of it all, but to me, they're still very beautiful.
You do feel squeezed in old age, like, where's my liberty? Where's my freedom? So I'm squeezed between two chairs and the ground, and I didn't know I could even get in there, let alone get out of there. So this whole dance started evolving with the broken things that are broken in your life, things you can't do anymore, things where you feel trapped, and how to move with that and feel with that, and remembering kindnesses and thoughtfulnesses and loving things. So the chairs then become partners. Although they're inanimate objects, they represent the people that sat in them. They represent the people that made them. They represent the people. And so this set is really populated by an awful lot of human endeavor and caring, sorrow, anger, death, birth.
Gillis says Old is about making a shift from fear to curiosity, something she hopes people think about with each passing year.
Old age is doable, it's workable, there can be excitement and beauty and joy. There are wisdoms to be gained, and if you just sit in your sorrow and don't let the sorrow move out of you, if you don't get curious, if you don't work with what you've got and then let that change and see what can we find that's good and how can we understand that as part of life and part of our journey.
Old will be the final full-length solo production for 71-year-old Margie Gillis. Shanley Vidal, CBC News, Winnipeg.
So that piece, of course, from our community reporter Shanley Vidal, as you heard. The Winnipeg Contemporary Dancers production of Old, as she also mentioned, runs this Friday through Sunday at the Rachel Brown Theatre here in the city.
Have you visited CBC's Being Black in Canada website? It's an online platform to explore the stories and experiences of Black Canadians from across the country. You'll find relevant news articles and interviews, incredible documentaries and interesting video clips, Black achievement in sports, art and culture recommendations, and so much more. Discover the wide breadth of CBC content celebrating Black Canadians all in one place. Visit cbc.ca/beingbblackincanada today.
7:44 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. It's cold out there, as Abby told you. Bundle up. And just a reminder, there's an extreme cold warning for parts of the province. This is southwest, including Brandon, and then all the way up through Riding Mountain National Park. So your wind chills are going to feel like minus 40. And it's kind of funny because really our wind chills in Winnipeg are going to feel like minus 34. But there's just that little difference of about 5-6 degrees where the extreme wind chill warnings kick in. So we're all going to have to be bundling up across the province. It is, as mentioned, just ahead of 8 o'clock, about 1:45 right now. After 8 o'clock on the program live, David McGuinty is going to be joining us. He's in Manitoba today. He's going to be at the border at Emerson today. He, of course, the federal public safety minister. So we have a lot of questions for him about not just what he's doing here in Manitoba, which is overseeing a training exercise. But all our questions are going to be about what this relationship is going to look like moving forward, as all of these announcements have come out from the feds about strengthening the border, and also about things like the fentanyl czar is the language that's being used. Who will that person be? What will they be actually doing at our border? So we will be talking about all of those things with live with the federal public safety minister here on CBC, coming up right after 8 o'clock on the show. Right now, ahead of our next interview, let's get into a couple of comments that are going to set us up. We asked you on Facebook, as we asked you about tariffs, we asked you about counter tariffs, and then as this all shifted late yesterday into the 30-day pause, we asked, how has your view of our relationship with the U.S. now shifted or not? So I'm going to share a couple of comments here. We have Mike Winnipeg writing in, there's still a very unreliable trading partner, and I didn't travel to the U.S. at all during the first term of Trump. I will not in the second term, and I'm boycotting as much many U.S.-made goods as I can. And using the word relationship, quote unquote, Mike writes, covers a lot of territory. You can have a toxic and bad relationship, or you can have a positive, mutually beneficial and reliable relationship. We have Valley Marco writing in that the president was still talking about Canada becoming the 51st state. It's no longer a joke or careless comment. He seems to enjoy, she writes specifically, he enjoys the anxiety, the discomfort, and the concern expressed by the majority of Canadians. How can our attitudes not be shifted with this constant rhetoric and the misrepresentation of facts he claims about Canada? And finally, Janelle Kincaid writing in, I think personally we have to be careful to not generalize how we feel about the U.S. leadership to all Americans. I have family who hold U.S. passports. It would make me sad to think that someone would put them in the same pile as the leadership. So you're writing in about that relationship with the states, and obviously the relationships you have with people specifically in the states. A whole lot of you have also been saying that you wish that U.S. liquor was still off of our shelves this morning. And it is not. As you heard in the news, proposed tariffs are now off the table for 30 days. That means Premier Wabkanu says that American alcohol is and has been put back on the shelf. This sets up our next interview. Here's a bit of what the Premier said yesterday.
So I encourage Manitobans to continue to have that Canadian pride, to continue to shop local, to continue to buy Manitoba-made products. I continue to stand by the superiority of Canadian booze relative to some of the products from south of the border. But for those who are fans of American booze, I can tell you we'll be putting those back on the shelves. And the work that was being undertaken to pull them from the shelves is now being reversed in response to the news today. But again, this is a long-term situation. This is a reprieve. Hopefully this is one that continues. Hopefully we don't see tariffs. But it's very clear that we have to start planning our economy to be more resilient and to be able to withstand this sort of situation so we don't find ourselves in a similar position going forward in the future.
That's part of what Manitoba Premier Wabkanu had to say yesterday on these issues. Now, this morning, one business owner says a trade war shouldn't be the reason people buy local. Brock Coots is one of the owners of Patent 5 Distillery and is in studio now. Hi there.
Good morning.
Obviously, you have a vested interest, but so I'm guessing it would have been your hope that they might have kept that American liquor off the shelves too.
Well, I think it would have been curious to see what the shelves looked like without American products, give people an idea of how many spirits we actually import from the U.S. and how little is produced in Canada. I had a thought this morning that wouldn't it be interesting if we were super protectionist and the only products on the shelves were products made in Manitoba, And people would be shocked at how tiny our industry is compared to what else is in Canada and the world.
What does it mean for you for how you're thinking about moving forward in the markets that you need to be strong for you to stay in business?
It's been kind of crazy. We import a lot of the botanicals for our gin from the U.S., our citrus, and so what are the implications of that? One thing that was talked about a few weeks ago was they were going to revisit interprovincial trade barriers, which would be fantastic. It's easier for us to sell into the U.S. and more profitable than it is to try to sell to our neighbors in Ontario or Quebec.
Can you give us a concrete example of that? Because I don't think a lot of people really realize this. So how much would it cost you and what makes it easier in the States as an example of that same thing when trying to sell it into Ontario or Quebec?
I don't know if the term subsidy is right, but the excise tax charged to U.S. producers is 1/7 of what we pay. So a bottle of our whiskey, we pay about $7 in federal excise tax. That same producer in the U.S. pays $1. So they have a huge competitive advantage in their own market, and they can establish themselves there and then afford to export into Canada. So, that's a bigger issue too, that I don't know anyone's going to tackle the Canadian-American, but most provinces don't afford craft distillers from out of province the same privileges that they do for their local distillers. So to compete in another province is also difficult.
What does it cost you to get your liquor on the shelf in Quebec? Can you do that?
Well, you could apply for a listing. Chances are we wouldn't get it. We don't have the marketing dollars to do it. So that's one good thing about Manitoba is we are afforded the opportunity to get our products on the shelves of the liquor marts.
How do you feel about this pause for 30 days and what will you be thinking about as a business owner? And doing?
Well, we have to think about where we're going to source some of the raw materials.
What are your options? I know I just asked you a question, but what are your options? You already raised that issue of the, I think you said the juniper, was it?
The citrus, all the botanicals.
Coming from the States. So where do you look?
Probably Europe.
Okay.
I don't know, but minimum order quantities, we have ordered from there in the past during the pandemic. But minimum order quantities are huge. It's not very easy for a small business. So I suppose there'd be the option that we could band together with other distillers and maybe bulk buy from Europe. But it makes it hard for a small business to focus a ton of your time on procurement.
And I interjected there, but what else? What other conversations have you been having?
We we make whiskey. Whiskey has to age for at least 3 years. So we thought, if there is an opportunity to sell more vodka and gin, maybe we move away from whiskey a little bit, pay the price in 3 or 4 or 5 years, and focus on a product that we could get on the shelves, in 2 or 3 months.
How does this uncertainty compare to other uncertainty you would have been through with your business because of various things, markets changing, the pandemic?
We've been around 6 years. It sort of feels or felt like before Trump came in that we were at a stable point and we could look at how do you expand. We have a pretty solid footprint in Manitoba. We still need to expand here, but you start to look at opportunities that are a little bit bigger. But this sort of shakes the foundation a bit where you think we better just make sure that we've got our supply chain and everything else in place should 30 days come and go, and we're right back where we were yesterday.
Where were you considering expanding?
We had I guess we still do have an opportunity in the Midwest in the U.S. for a couple of our gins, which is really exciting. And we've been waiting for this purchase order for a long time. It's hard to penetrate the U.S. And yesterday they said, well, we think we're close. I'm like, well, we couldn't economically export to the U.S. with a 25% tariff. So we kind of paused that. And I don't know whether we make big plans now if in 30 days we're back to square one.
As I mentioned, you were talking about the point of view that a trade war shouldn't be the reason that people buy local. Having said that, is there some opportunity here, as we are in a moment where Canadians maybe that even haven't paid that much attention might really be looking at the labels?
Absolutely. Like, yes, we have, we sell online as well. And yesterday we had 10 orders, which is extraordinary for early February. And almost everybody put a comment in with their order to say, hey, way to go. We're here to support local. We're here to support Canadian. So hopefully that's the good that comes of this, is that people start focusing on how do we support local and Canadian businesses and not buy bourbon from the U.S. Let's try a Canadian whiskey and see if we like it.
How challenging is it to make your products as affordable as those, bigger marketed products that might come from the States and be, beside yours on the shelf?
Impossible. Like the way we produce, like if you've ever seen the scale, I mean, Crown Royal is Canadian, but they're about 1,000 times our size. So the economies of scale in spirits production is everything. So we would never be able to compete on price. And so we compete on, locally made, all of our goods are sourced in Manitoba, all of our grain. But when you move into a larger market like the U.S., it's a bit tougher to get that message across.
When people look at, I've looked at your products and had your products myself before, lovely. But when people look at the bottle, I don't remember if I immediately see on the bottle, Canada or Manitoba.
It probably, Canada now has a program where you can have a Made in Canada sticker that's sort of sanctioned by the government of Canada if you do export your product. So, one thing we talked about yesterday is maybe we need that sticker on the shelves for all of our local products, just so people are drawn to the maple leaf so that they know that that's made in Canada. We do say distilled in Winnipeg, but it is a little bit smaller than the rest of the text.
Yeah, well, you've got this. I love your bottles, by the way.
Thank
Your
you.
marketing's really beautiful, really simple. I wonder what you have to say this morning about, or would like to say this morning rather, about, we're talking about the products and the market suppliers, but we haven't yet talked about the staff. I mean, local businesses and such. What's it like for you as a small business in terms of, was there some stress even in terms of your employees, the people that you employ?
I think we told everybody that for us it's business as usual. Worst case, if something terrible happened, we would just make product and warehouse it and wait for things to shake out so that we could sell it. So no, everybody yesterday was very comfortable. I mean, obviously lots of talk about Trump and
yeah. Yeah. What moving forward then, obviously you'll be seeing, as you said, what happens. But what's the communication been like? I mean, yesterday, this morning meeting between Trump and Trudeau, and then the afternoon meeting, and the headlines kept changing. I'm wondering, here in Manitoba, what was that like for you as you were hearing, okay, they're pulling American things off. Well, hang on, they're going to put them back on the shelves. What was that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, Liquor and Lotteries was sending out information to us to say, hey, any orders for American products will be stopped. There's a whiskey fest coming up at the end of February. You can get a full refund because we won't have American products there. And then, it was chaos, really. And then everybody's backtracking when the announcement came out at 4 or 5 o'clock or whatever time it was.
I guess last, what do you see as the impact on the trade relationship between the States and Canada moving forward? Like you've alluded to the fact that you have this deal that could still be happening with the States. And
right.
I think you said the Midwest.
Yeah.
How does it change your view of it? Does it make you more cautious about it? Or are you trying to pull that down to the, do you look at what we're talking about at the macro level and then try to separate it out and say, hang on, this still could be business done in good faith with this group I'm working with?
For sure. But tariffs, the macro issue like potential tariffs is, I read about another company in Ontario that was looking at moving their manufacturing to the U.S. so they wouldn't be subject to tariffs. We're not that big. But if you look at the future, Diageo canceled the building of a distillery in southern Ontario and announced yesterday that they're putting one in the southern U.S. I don't know whether they say, hey, we better produce where our customers are. But for us, we're too small to have a second facility anywhere. So we just really need to focus on what we do well and concentrate on Manitoba first.
Thank you very much for being here, Brock. Appreciate you coming in this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's Brock Coots, one of the owners of Patent 5 Distillery, as we continue to look at all the angles of this evolving story. As I mentioned, Federal Public Safety Minister David McGuinty here on CBC After 8. Heather Wells here first with our headlines.
Well, the pause on tariffs has brought some temporary relief to Manitoba's pork industry. Still, uncertainty lingers. Scott Peters is a hog producer west of Steinbach and raises thousands of pigs every year. He says Manitoba's relationship with the U.S. pork industry is very intertwined. He hopes this threat of tariffs will end before the 30-day pause does. Manitoba's premier says the province is bringing in new measures to fight money laundering. Manitoba directing all casinos to report suspicious activity to police. Premier Wab Kinew says the change will speed up investigations and increase oversight into financial crimes. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Amin called the commuter line northbound Route 90. A couple of different collisions on on the St. James Bridge. So they're all causing backups. Just the median lane is open. So update us if you have an update, 788-3093. I'm Marcy Marcusa, minus 22 in Winnipeg, and still ahead, the federal public safety minister for a live interview, as well as more on the tariffs.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
I'm a Mr. Kim and this is my store.
If you're familiar with Kim's Convenience, you probably know that it started as a play in Toronto and then became a hit TV sitcom before it disappeared abruptly off the air. The creator of Kim's Convenience, Ins Choi, will be here to tell you how he came up with the play and why he stepped away. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Labrador is a place of dramatic coastlines and sweeping barrens, but for the Inuk photographer Eldred Allen, it also means home and the people who live there. Eldred Allen on showing the rest of Canada the real beauty of Nunatsiavut, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. The U.S. tariff threat is on hold for now, but the pressure to secure the border is not over, and U.S. President Donald Trump is still making comments about his plans for a 51st state. How is Canada going to proceed? Janice McGregor is here from our Parliamentary Bureau with some analysis. Janice, what happens now?
Marcia, what political leaders have to grapple with is that this may be an economic reprieve, but it's not a political one. Sure, Canada's not rolling out tariffs this morning, but everything else remains. They have to demonstrate progress at the border, name someone to be this fentanyl czar, make sure that the new spending actually delivers results that Washington will see. And Canada can explain away Trump's trade deficit allegations, but the data on military spending and defense capabilities are not flattering and have to improve, not just because of Trump's threats. Even work on the retaliation strategy can't let up because March 4th isn't very far away. And even after that, there's the other trade reviews with April 1st deadlines. Those could trigger other actions against Canada. On and on it goes. Premiers aren't canceling their lobbying trip to Washington next week. If anything, it's more urgent than ever. Here's Premiers Andrew Furey and David Eby, who represent provinces on opposite coasts but are very much on the same page.
Who knows? I mean, he's saying 30 days. Can we really, take him at his word?
We need to be prepared if there's a tweet tomorrow that puts the tariffs back on.
So the politics remain chaotic. What does that mean for how Canadians do business from here?
Well, how much of this reignited patriotism persists, not only in the minds of shoppers, but on the minds of voters, influencing their ballot choices for months to come? The whole point of negotiating a deal is having certainty and stability into the future. But Canadians now have good reason to believe that the trade agreement that affects their economy the most can't be trusted. The guy that signed it doesn't keep his word. This riskier new normal could shape business, political, even personal decisions for the entire Trump presidency.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Trump's tariff pause for Canada is getting mixed reactions south of the border. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, in Trump world, they're declaring victory. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Canada is bending the knee, just like Mexico. Now, President Trump agreed to pause tariffs against his neighbors for the next month after both countries agreed to beef up their borders and crack down on fentanyl. But it should be noted most of Canada's commitments were announced back in December. But this pause comes as welcome relief to states bracing for potential retaliation from Canada. Kentucky's governor, Democrat Andy Beshear, was concerned about his state's bourbon sales up north. Listen.
The number we're worried about is zero. That's how many bottles of Kentucky bourbon were going to be on shelves in Canada, which again is our number one export partner. Listen, when anyone's policies threaten the livelihood of the people of Kentucky, I'm certainly going to speak up.
Now, while these tariffs may be on hold, the threat isn't over. Trump's strategy to leverage the U.S. economy as a weapon to force other countries to make concessions is being viewed by his base as a win.
Not a win for China, though. China is fighting back on tariffs. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this trade war is escalating between the world's two largest economies. Now, Trump's 10% tariffs on Chinese products have taken effect, and Beijing is already retaliating with targeted levies of its own, including a 15% tax on U.S. energy exports and certain metals used for electronics and solar panels. Now, China is also launching an anti-monopoly investigation into Google's parent company, Alphabet, and may slap sanctions on various holding companies that own big U.S. brands like Calvin Klein. Now, Trump slapped on these tariffs for China's exports of fentanyl, and the White House says Trump will speak to Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week.
All right, thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Despite the pause on U.S. tariffs for Canada and Mexico, there are major concerns within Newfoundland and Labrador's fishing industry. A trade war could cost the province billions of dollars and would put thousands of people out of work. The union representing those in the fishery want the province to come up with a plan. Elizabeth Witten has that story.
Newfoundland and Labrador is exporting about $4.5 billion in goods to the U.S. every year. As much as 80% of all seafood caught here is purchased south of the border. The impact of new American tariffs is a crisis this province hasn't seen in decades, says Jeff Loader, executive director of the Association of Seafood Producers.
This is arguably the most serious threat to the Newfoundland Labrador fishery since the cod moratorium.
One of the first waves which could be affected is the province's coveted snow crab fishery, worth more than $700 million annually. It starts up next month. And Food Fisheries President Dwan Street says tariffs will impact harvesters, plant workers, and adjacent industries.
Our industry is going to be the first and we think most heavily impacted in Newfoundland and Labrador by these tariffs.
Street and Loader want the provincial government to put together a roundtable looking at what support could be offered. And while buying local is important, Street says there aren't enough buyers in the country to keep seafood sales afloat.
We need to prepare and always be prepared for the uncertainty that's going to come over the next 4 years.
She's anticipating that uncertainty to remain constant and is a reason why the fishery needs a new plan. Elizabeth Witten, CBC News, St. John's.
Greenland is going to the polls for an election on April 6th, but before then, it's banning foreign political donations. The government of the Autonomous Territory says it needs to safeguard Greenland's political integrity, and it's worried about potential election interference after U.S. President Donald Trump expressed an interest in buying the Arctic island. The proposed bill says political parties cannot receive donations from anonymous donors or anyone who resides outside Greenland, and they can't accept donations greater than $4,000 from a single source. Since his return to the Oval Office, Donald Trump has made several orders targeting transgender Americans. Access to gender-affirming care for youth was rolled back. Openly trans soldiers have been banned from serving in the military. As Katie Simpson tells us, the changes could alter whether Americans affected by these orders can claim asylum in Canada.
Kelly's dog tap dances across the floor of her new Minnesota home. She and her family moved here a year and a half ago from Florida because of anti-trans laws and hostility.
Essentially, we were kicked out of our church and our school.
Kelly's oldest, Ollie, is trans. We aren't using the family's last name because they have concerns about their safety. After moving once, they fear they may have to move again because of actions taken by the Trump administration. That means looking at other countries, Malta, Portugal, and Canada.
To qualify for asylum in Canada, you must prove a well-founded fear of persecution.
It's hard for her to digest.
How are you and I having this conversation about seeking asylum in Canada? It's so dystopian. I just don't understand it.
Claiming asylum has been a tough argument for Americans to make in Canada, says Toronto-based immigration lawyer Joyce Nakang.
What you have to prove is that the state is unwilling or unable to protect you and that there's nowhere else in your country that you can go and live safely.
That was before Trump's orders rolled out, recognizing only two genders, banning transgender soldiers from the military, and defunding gender-affirming care for youth. Now, the argument may resonate.
I think we're seeing a lot clearer picture of the state being the agent of persecution.
Kelly's son, Ollie, says he feels safe in Minnesota, but he's keeping his options open as the country's policies change.
I didn't think so much was going to happen so fast and it would be so bad.
And if he has to leave, his family says they will do it together. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Katie Nicholson will have more on this story tonight on The National. That is at 9 p.m. on CBC Television and CBC Gem. It is Black History Month, a time to celebrate the achievements and contributions of Black Canadians. And in that spirit, our colleagues at CBC Kids News have been asking teens who their favorite Black creators are.
Who's a Black creator you follow that you think people should know about?
Gideon, he's like a YouTuber. He's just really funny. Keith Lee, he loves to support small businesses using his platform. Zendaya, I just think she's really inspiring and motivational.
Marquez Brownlee, he makes tech videos, and I like that.
And this year, Black History Month theme includes a nod to uplifting future generations. That is the latest from World Report. Listen to World Report is the easiest way to stay on top of the news, but we need help getting the word out. You can help today by hitting the follow button on your preferred podcast app. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, where it's mainly clear this morning and cold across the province. Thanks for joining us. Well, this half hour on the show, we're going to talk to the federal public safety minister in this country, David McGuinty, who's right now in the car on his way to the Emerson border for an event he has there today. We are going to ask him about the new measures being announced at the border. What is fentanyl czar exactly? What are we going to see moving forward in the light of this 30-day pause on tariffs that was announced late yesterday? So stay tuned for that live interview with the federal minister. Also, this half hour in the program, staying with tariffs, we're going to hear from a former farmer about how the uncertainty of the tough times right now can take an emotional toll specifically on the farming industry. So that's coming up this half hour as well. Stay right here. Headlines in a moment. Heather Wells, what do you have developing?
Good morning. Well, everyone's talking about the pause on tariffs. And at Supply Build Canada, they're concerned about how long this will go on. The organization represents building supply manufacturers and retailers in Western Canada. Its president, Liz Kovacs, says their industry is so integrated with the U.S., the tariff threat was and still is causing concern. She hopes this is an opportunity for Canada to reduce red tape between provinces. Casinos in this province are now going to be required to report suspected money laundering directly to police. President Trump has accused Canada of allowing drug smuggling and money laundering. Premier Canoe says yesterday's announcement wasn't in response to threats from the U.S., but he says if it can strengthen the relationship, then it's a win-win. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Abby, what's up in the weather?
It's extremely cold across the province. We do have that extreme cold warning in effect, especially in the southwestern region of the province from Brandon all the way down to Riding Mountain with wind chills in the values of minus 40 to minus 45. Actual temperatures in that region is close to minus 39 at this point. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 22.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk with the commute. We did have an issue just before 8, right?
Yeah, I got a call from Amin about 15 minutes or so ago. He said northbound Route 90, right on the St. James Bridge, there's been a couple collisions that you kind of have to zigzag around. But he says the median lane is the place to be if you want to get around. It is causing backups, as you can imagine. So that's northbound Route 90 on the St. James Bridge. If you have any other updates for me on that or anything else you're seeing, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
8:13 is the time right now, and as we've mentioned, Canada's public safety minister is en route right now to Emerson, Manitoba, just a day after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau posted on X that nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. Now, the Canadian government has already committed $1.3 billion to bolster the border. Yesterday, Trudeau provided more details about the plan, just after confirming that the U.S. president's proposed tariffs have been put on pause. Now, a lot of the announcements, though, that were made from Canada and the feds were things that were actually previously announced in December. David McGuinty is the minister that we're talking about here. He is en route to Emerson, literally in the car right now. He's going to be overseeing a border training exercise there. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
How do you think that the border will change given what was announced by your government yesterday? And in the Manitoba portion of the border, will we physically see some of those changes?
Well, I think the first thing to take note of is that our border is strong, and it's going to be made stronger as a result of these recent announcements by the Prime Minister as a result of his negotiations with President Trump. Premier Canoe and I and Minister Terry Duguid and MP Ben Carr are heading down to the border. We're going to be seeing that border plan in action, meeting with our Canada Border Services folks, our RCMP folks, and we're going to build on some of the biggest investments ever, Marcy, in Canada with respect to border improvements. You know, our Black Hawk helicopters, drones, sensors, cameras, etc. And I think what it shows for listeners is when you work together, both inside this country and with the United States, we can really, really come to ground in strengthening and fixing this problem.
What problem? I think that people might sort of be wondering why it took Trump to take maybe the border issues more seriously, and maybe not being able to understand how, if you look at the numbers, a relatively small amount of fentanyl crossing the border could be viewed as this major point of conflict between our two countries.
Well, it's important for listeners to understand, as you just pointed out, less than 1% of all of the fentanyl heading into the United States is coming from Canada. Other sources, other locations, of course, are more prominent. For example, in a 12-month period recently, about 43 pounds of fentanyl was seized crossing from Canada into the United States, while on its southern border, 21,000 pounds were seized. So we think that, you know, we have progress to make. The president has raised this as a serious issue. We share that concern. When our top neighbor, our ally, our biggest trading partner says we have concerns about this, we listened. And that's why I think that what we saw yesterday in terms of how we prevented these tariffs for 30 days as we work our way forward is a really, it's just an interesting outcome of what happens when you come together as a Team Canada. And I do want to thank Manitobans for stepping up. I want to thank the conservation officers on the front line. I want to talk to the folks that are there today to thank them personally. There are a number of issues that we're wrestling to the ground, and we've made a series of investments, and we're making more.
Help us understand how bolstering security on our side of the border will prevent people and drugs from going into the United States, because CBSA doesn't stop people from, heading to the border. They stop people coming in. So it's up to the U.S. Border Services and police to stop that. So what will this fentanyl czar, as it's been called, actually be doing to assist in this way? And what does that look like?
That's an excellent question, Marcy. And the reality is, if we're going to wrestle the fentanyl demon to the ground, we've got to do it together. This is an interconnected problem. Right now, Canada and the United States share the terrible tragedy and scourge of fentanyl use. So we are working with our counterparts. For example, one of the things that we're building on is our announcement to create a Canada-U.S. enforcement fentanyl strike force. That's where we'll not only be working together between Canada and the United States in terms of operational folks, but also within Canada. We'd be working with our provinces and our local police, our national agencies. This is a real all-hands-on-deck moment here now. We've got to get this fentanyl issue wrestled to the ground. It's very dangerous for Canada, very dangerous for the United States, and the president is right in raising this, and we're responding accordingly, and we want to get this thing handled as best we can.
But to be clear, does this fentanyl czar have anything actually to do with what's happening at the border?
The fentanyl czar's role will be very much one to help integrate the different parts of this response. For example, we're standing up a series of new laboratories in Canada so we can properly track and trace where the precursors are coming from that are used to make fentanyl. That's one moving part, for example. That new fentanyl person will be working with our police forces, will be working with Health Canada, working with the border folks, working with their American counterparts, working with police of local jurisdiction, making sure our attorneys general are properly prosecuting where they can. We don't want to, I guess, look, this is all about one basic goal here. We are working hard to prevent any tariffs from being applied on Canadian goods and services and companies. That's the objective here. We've managed to get a 30-day reprieve. We're going to go back to this. We're hard at it. This Team Canada approach that prevented the tariffs is exactly the same approach we've got to take now to wrestle some of these issues to the ground. And this new fentanyl individual, the fentanyl czar, will help pull all this together for us.
So this is a border response, effectively, though, to try to stop the trade more, because President Trump has positioned this way. But he's also flip-flopped on his motivation for asking Canada to do all these things.
He may have, and it's hard for me to understand all that's going on in Washington right now. I'm fixated on dealing with this problem. I was in Washington last week meeting with White House officials, with Minister Jolie and Minister Miller, the immigration minister, and we shared a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of details. I think they were quite surprised. They didn't have all the facts. And I think in the call yesterday between the Prime Minister and the President, much of that information was shared directly with President Trump. So, look, we have an obligation to meet this head on. We're doing everything we can right now to, as I say, keep these tariffs off. I'm getting calls in my own constituency office back in my home riding in Ottawa, where people are saying, in tears, what's going to happen to my company? How many employees might I have to let go? So we get the importance of this, but of course the fentanyl crisis is also the one that's the most tragic. Many thousands of families in Canada have been touched by this. So we're going to go forward and cooperate between our countries and within our country.
I just have a couple more questions for you, David McGuinty, who is with us live on CBC, by the way, if you're just tuning in, on his way to the Emerson border this morning to oversee a training exercise. Of course, he, the federal public safety minister in this country. One of our listeners was writing in about the language here and says she doesn't think that we should be, this is her language, quote, this is Valerie Bunce writing in, kowtowing to him, President Trump, or creating czars, quote unquote, of any kind. Why are we using that term, czar?
Well, we're using the term because it's a fairly understood term across the federal system, across the country. It's one that might align with the United States understanding as well. Look, this is part and parcel of the ongoing management of the relationship we've had with our biggest trading partner, our ally, our neighbor, for 150 years. So we're working now to implement some measures that will really help continue to keep that relationship solid. I mean, we're no country is an island unless it's an island. We're not an island. We are working here together with the U.S. And the language is what it is. The role of the fentanyl czar, as I explained, to work across all kinds of different actors, different spaces, and both countries, to wrestle this scourge to the ground, because it's a North American problem. But again, I want to repeat for listeners, less than 1% of fentanyl going into the United States is coming from Canada. So we have progress to make. That's why, for example, we're talking about listing drug cartels as terrorist entities under the criminal code. That will give us additional powers to follow the money, seize their assets, for example. That's why we're looking at new 24/7 eyes on the border to make sure that we can, with drones and Blackhawks and sensors, make sure that we keep it all very safe. We want to keep the border open. It's the longest undefended border in the world, and we intend to keep it that way. And we continue to message to our American counterparts, that's the win here for all of us. And so that's how we're doing this. We've got 30 days to execute on a plan. That's what I'm really, really bearing down on, and that's why we're going to the border today.
What do you do at the border if this doesn't satisfy Donald Trump? We
keep moving forward, and we keep improving. We keep moving forward. This relationship is a very, very important relationship for Canada.
But when, if I can interject here, when do you say to him, less than 1% of the fentanyl going across is this? And
he's aware of that. His team is aware of that. We're going to continue showing progress because, we have cartel issues that are coming from the United States and elsewhere into Canada. We have the transportation of drugs. And unless we think this is, necessarily only about fentanyl, it's strongly about fentanyl. We have a lot of narcotics coming into the country. We do have guns coming into the country. And I think that this is part and parcel as well of what we're going to be tackling jointly. And the joint strike force that we will put together between Canada and U.S. will almost certainly be bearing down on those challenges as well.
Just as a last question, as a federal minister, what would you say to Canadians and, of course, to Manitobans who are listening today as you're heading to the Emerson border? They're watching all this and they're feeling that they're concerned that this is really about our sovereignty being threatened by the United States.
I would say that we share that concern, except that we're taking action to counteract any of that discussion. This commentary coming from the White House or elsewhere about a 51st state, from our perspective, is something we hear and we listen to it, but we don't see this as a serious issue because we're too busy asserting our sovereignty by taking these measures and reminding our partner in the United States that we have a choice to make here. We can continue to have a prolific economy and a good relationship and have a win-win outcome, or we can turn on each other and have a lose-lose outcome. We don't think that latter choice is the right one. It's very much about moving forward, keeping our jobs, building our businesses, and managing this relationship well. We seem to have been able to do it for 150 years. We're convinced we can keep doing it now.
We'll leave it there and let you continue your journey. Thank you very much for so much of your time today.
Thank you, Marcy. And once again, I want to thank all Manitobans for their concern, their support. This Team Canada effort, I think, is really helping out. Thank you so much.
That's Public Safety Minister live on CBC, David McGuinty. He's on his way to Emerson right now to oversee a training exercise. Time right now is 8:25 a.m. Well, let's stay talking about tariffs. CBC spoke to farmers about the impact tariffs could have on them. Tobin Dick is a grain farmer. Scott Peters is a pork producer. Here's what they had to say.
I hear reports even before this that there's lots of stress in the ag sector right now just because of the tight margins, and then something like this, even Trump's election, I know stirred some, caused some stress amongst people, but this will have an impact.
Yeah, how am I feeling? I'm worried. I'm concerned for the people that work in the industry. I feel like there's maybe could potentially be a good outcome here at some point. But if this thing lasts for several months or several years, then we're in all kinds of trouble. I just hope that it doesn't.
So that was Scott Peters. Before him, you heard from Tobin Dick talking about the tariffs that have been proposed. Of course, now we're in a 30-day pause, but it doesn't change the stress of the uncertainty, right? So let's talk about the emotional toll that this takes on the ag industry specifically. Jerry Friesen joins us via Zoom, one of the founders of Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what were your thoughts when you found out about the pause on tariffs, first of all?
Well, Marcy, I guess it comes with mixed emotions because number one is, like you just had Tobin and Mr. Peters talk about the fact that now it's a wait and see game again, and it's always these uncertainties, the unknowns that create an enormous amount of stress, and so that's why I say yes, there is a reprieve, and yet the worries continue.
What do you hear from farmers right now, given that obviously you're part of this wellness initiative, about how they're coping, given that, if you're a small business and you're looking for other markets for your products or trying to shift things, that's much different than if you have this multi-layer of an ag operation.
That is, and in my conversations with farmers, Marcy, there's a continual expression of concern of what this will look like. Whether that's livestock producers, whether that's grain producers, market gardeners, whatever the case may be, is again where the farmers are investing significant money into their operations and doing so without knowing what the end result will be, what they will in fact be able to get for their product is the concerning part.
When you think about your program, how does the Farmer Wellness Program actually work to support people? Is it the lines that they call, or do you also have programs that you'd like people to know about?
No, basically what it is, Marcy, is we provide longer-term counseling. It's not a crisis service. We do have the Manitoba Farm and Rural Stress Line in Manitoba that producers can phone if they're in crisis. But our program provides 9 free or no-cost sessions to farmers, their families over the age of 16, and employees to give them that opportunity to talk about their stress, to talk about what's going on in their lives in a safe space, someone that listens without judgment and is able to provide resources that will help people cope with these stressors.
What would you say to Manitobans about how they can help support the ag industry at this time?
Well, I'm a staunch proponent of the fact that we see it all on billboards, etc., that farming feeds us all. I think as a general population, we know that the farming population is relatively small. It makes up less than 2% of our population. And so I hope that from society in general, there's that understanding, there's that empathy, that we can provide that empathy to our producers, to provide that listening, non-judgmental ear, and to help support them as they work their way through a worrisome situation.
Appreciate having you on with us this morning, Jerry, to talk about the work that you do in these obviously uncertain times. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Marcy.
That's Jerry Friesen via Zoom, one of the founders of Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program. We also heard from grain farmer Tobin Dick and pork producer Scott Peters. We have a small traffic note here before the news. David called. He says the collisions on the St. James Bridge have now been cleared. So there were two. Initially, the median lane had only been open, but David said that's all cleared up now, so smooth driving through there. 788-3093 if you have anything to add late in the drive here. Another cold day ahead, an extreme cold warning for Brandon and up through Riding Mountain. In Winnipeg, we're going to go to a high of -18. We've been around -22 for most of the morning. I want to take a moment to thank the folks that worked on today's show specifically and worked on getting the programming to air, or maybe were featured in some of the pieces, booking interviews, writing. Today, Shanley Vidal, our community reporter, associate producers Kalkana Mulageta, Chidi Akuma, Issa Kixon, Abby Adiemi, Corey Funk, as well as YouTube producer Kevin Nipatebo, Donna Carrero, producer filling in for Nelly Gonzalez, and the senior producer of audio is Leif Larson in our unit and at CBC Manitoba. So big thanks to everybody, and our thanks to our news department as well, Megan Ketchison, as well as Joni Nicolo and Heather Wells, who's about to give us our 8:30 news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. -22 downtown, but out at the airport right now, it's -27. Bundle up. It is very cold out there. A high today of -18. We get a little warmer tomorrow, but it comes with snow. It has been a busy couple of days for workers at Manitoba liquor marts. They are now restocking shelves they had just emptied. Premier Wapkanu says the province will undo its orders to pull liquor and wine from the U.S. The move comes after Donald Trump granted Canada a 1-month extension on wide-ranging tariffs.
I really got to thank the hardworking people in the LCs and in the warehouses. You're probably, looking at the ceiling wondering what's going on. But it's clear that when we stand up for ourselves as Canadians and as Manitobans, we take steps like taking $80 million out of the American economy by not buying their booze, that gets attention.
Canoe says Manitoba needs to diversify its markets to sell to the European Union and Asia. He says his cabinet will not move forward with plans to restrict U.S. companies from winning provincial contracts to supply goods and services. Will this pause on tariffs? For how long? That question comes from a lot of members of Supply Build Canada. The organization represents building supply manufacturers and retailers in Western Canada, from lumber to finished goods. President Liz Kovacs says the industry is so integrated with the U.S., the tariff threat was and still is causing concern.
There's a lot of high angst amongst a lot of people in our membership because they don't know where this is going to go. And the uncertainty doesn't help, but knowing that there's a pause on it is at least a little bit of a sigh of relief. But is there really going to be a pause? What's going to happen tomorrow? I mean, really, he's been so back and forth.
And it is temporary relief for Manitoba's pork industry. Scott Peters is a hog producer west of Steinbach. He raises thousands of pigs every year. Some are sent for slaughter and processed in Manitoba, then shipped back as pork products to the U.S. Live animals are also exported south of the border. Peters says Manitoba's relationship with the U.S. pork industry is very intertwined.
We definitely think that the tariffs are unfair. They will impact us directly, and it doesn't matter if we finish pigs in Canada or if we sell weanlings into the U.S. The well-oiled machine that we have is in jeopardy of breaking down.
Peters hopes cooler heads prevail. He hopes the threat of tariffs will end before the 30-day pause expires. Now, Premier Wapkanu says the province is bringing in new measures to fight money laundering. Manitoba is directing all casinos to report suspicious activity directly to police. Until now, Manitoba Liquor and Lottery staff would make reports to FinTrack, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. Canoe says the change will speed up investigations and increase oversight into financial crimes.
That will help people build cases, that will help officers conduct investigations, and that will help to hold people accountable who are responsible for the scourge of toxic drugs that we're seeing, fentanyl and many other damaging drugs that we're seeing in our communities here in Manitoba.
The province will also add staff to its anti-money laundering team and spend $325,000 on new surveillance equipment. The chief of a First Nation in Western Manitoba is suing a recently appointed Manitoba Hydro board member for defamation. Gambler First Nation Chief David Ledoux alleges Vern Kalmakoff and others made false and malicious statements about him. The statement of claim says Ledoux was publicly accused of murdering a man and taking out a contract to have a woman killed. Ledoux says that is false. He says the comments happened after he refused to give the board member a special deal on a commercial lease on Gambler Urban Reserve. The chief is seeking $750,000 plus damages. None of the allegations have been proven in court. And voters in Greenland are going to the polls on April 6th. But before the election, the Autonomous Territory is looking to ban foreign political donations. The Greenland government says it needs to safeguard its political integrity. It is concerned about potential election interference after U.S. President Donald Trump expressed an interest in buying the Arctic island. The proposed bill says political parties can't receive donations from anonymous donors or anyone who lives outside Greenland. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks for the morning, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, just a last reminder here that we want you to enter to win these amazing prize packs we have. We've got CBC toque and socks and a travel blanket and a bag, a retro vintage CBC mug from 1970 with the old logo on it. Looks really cool. They're new, but made to be retro, right? Look retro. And then we've got all of the shirt and mug from the Ironman curling bond spill. And we've got a picture up on YouTube if you want to check out the prize pack. We have 2 to give away. We are asking you for your most heartwarming story about curling. So we know you've probably thrown a jam pail or maybe a real rock. Maybe you've been on a backyard rink or a river in your town or your city in Manitoba somewhere, or maybe you're a regular curler. So what's your most heartwarming story about curling? This is to get you thinking about the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel. CBC, a proud sponsor. It's happening this weekend at the Red Boyne Boat Club on Churchill Drive. I'm going to be out there with our CBC team exploring curling. I'm saying it that way because we're actually not expecting to win much, but man, it's going to be fun. So maybe you'll be supporting some of the teams as well and supporting the cause, because this supports the Heart and Stroke Foundation and other Canadian charities. So write us, win at cbc.ca, or call us 204-788-3206 with your heartwarming curling stories. And maybe you'll win. We're going to close the contest today at noon. We will announce the winners and share stories tomorrow. And last look at weather with Abby now.
We're looking at a very cold day across the province. Actual temperatures feeling very low. Extreme cold warnings affecting the southwestern part of the province. We're seeing wind chills in the range of -45, though it should improve by midday. Winnipeg, we're ending the show with -22.
Corey?
Western Portage and Gary, there's a multi-vehicle collision that knocked down a traffic pole. Lights are still working, but westbound Median Lane is blocked.
That's it for us. Thanks, guys. And thank you for listening to Information Radio here on CBC. We'll talk to you tomorrow.